meeting of October 28th, 2019. We open this evening's...
Your mic is on the other side of your cup.
Oh, no, that's his mic.
We open this meeting, I'll start again, at 5:45 in executive session, continued discussion on potential agreement with non-union personnel, which we'll continue that discussion for at least one more week. We then reconvened in this meeting. I would like to start this then by a pledge. Well, excuse me. First, I'll read the statement as required. By open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chairman prior to the start of the meeting. Is there any interest in doing so? If not, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Anyone here for a weekly briefing? Chris, you wish to give us an update on the...
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the sewer work continues to progress along. For this week, they're looking at continuing to do the mainline sewer crew on Route 39 and the mainline sewer crew on the second crew on Route 137. So both of those have detours. It does look like on to November 4th through the 8th that same work will continue. And then on the 15th, from the 11th to the 15th, it also looks. We have had some discussions as we come up on the holidays that we will ask for kind of reprieve during the Thanksgiving holiday week itself, so there may be limited amount of work at the beginning of the week, and then the tail end of the week will be lay off. I do have a meeting tomorrow, so I should be able to provide some additional update at next week's meeting.
Okay. Thank you. I do have one concern. I live in that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And Chief, I might have a question for you going forward. There's a bottleneck where Church Street comes down to 39 and 137 by the corner store there. Is there any, I know on that traffic can get blocked all the way up from that intersection to Northeast Drive, for instance. Would any police, would they help direct traffic? Would that benefit that traffic jam, or is just not much we can do?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I do know what you're talking about. I know Lieutenant Sullivan has very little hair left because of the issues created by this
And he
detour.
lives in that neighborhood too.
Yes,
so he knows
exactly. I know. So I will put him on it. If there are any suggestions that you have that you think might work, I know he is on top of those details and the detours and the complaints, and we have fielded multiple extra units out there attempting to manage the increase in volume. There's been a lot of complaints about the speed as well, but that I think we have determined that it's more of a volume thing, vehicles going through areas at a volume that they ordinarily are not.
Yeah.
So, but yes, obviously, if it's determined that we need somebody actually directing traffic because of backups or something, we would take action on that immediately.
Okay, thank you. It's a funny intersection. There's not enough space there to
Yeah.
do anything.
So Church and Queen Anne just
Right.
is where you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Chris. Anything else? Any other comments from the audience? Carolyn?
Thank you. On Thursday is our Halloween party at the community center. It starts at 4:30. It's free for everyone. We have trick-or-treating inside. We have a Halloween costume parade. Then we have dinner for everyone, so come on by. It's a great time. And we thank all the people who have been calling up to volunteer. We usually get about 300 young people, so it's really a popular event.
And Carolyn, before you leave that, what's the times again?
It starts at 4:30.
Okay.
And it
So I can
ends
be
when it
there and
ends.
still give out candy to my neighborhood.
Oh, put a bowl at the end and invite everyone to come down and see us. And then when you're coming, you might want to just bring, it's that time of year again where we're doing Cape Cod Cares for Our Troops. And the deadline, we have a box at the front. We've done this for years, and we just this any donations that you might have in by November 15th because we have to ship them out. So crossword puzzles, gloves, trivia books, just small things. We have a list on our website, but that's going on right now at the community center as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Oh, I went one more.
Good evening. I'd like to announce that on November 30th, we'll have the long-awaited ribbon cutting for the new firehouse number 2 in East Harwich. It'll be at 10 in the morning. It's a Saturday morning. Felt it was important that, for one, my wife could attend something we do. So Saturday morning, I thought would be more open to the public and for the folks. So 10 in the morning at the new station on November 30th. There'll be more information coming out. And I'm sure that some or most of you would like to say something.
I would. Is that next to Thanksgiving? When's
It's the Saturday after.
Saturday after Thanksgiving?
You made a grimace, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I may be then. That's my problem. I need to check my calendar.
Well, there's 4 more of you. I'm sure we
Before,
can
yeah,
find someone
can
to
happen.
say something.
Good point. Anyone else that can move away from that discussion?
Hi, good evening. Erica Stressbeck, Harwich Cultural Center. After the ribbon cutting, or some of you attend the ribbon cutting, on the 30th at the Cultural Center from 10 to 1, we have our 3rd annual Holiday Bazaar. So we'll have local craftsmen in the upstairs former library space. So I do have a few tables left if you're interested and haven't already signed up. I have flyers over here in the back. And we do have information online, so people can sign up with myself or with Carolyn at the community center. So that is at 10 o'clock on the 30th after the ribbon cutting ceremony. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Cindy?
I'm just going to really have fun with the November 30th because that actually is also Small Business Saturday, Shop Local. So after we do our great ribbon cutting that, yes, the Chamber will be doing with the fire station, remember, you can shop locally up in East Harwich.
Okay, thank you. Ed? Or excuse me.
Well, as the 30th was the date to pile on, I'll add one more. At the community center on Saturday the 30th from 9 to 2, the Lower Cape Eastham Kiwanis Club is having their annual after Thanksgiving market in the gymnasium at the community center. I know there'll be a bake table by the local Monomoy High School Key Club, and we expect about 40 different vendors to set up tables, as well as tables set up by the club itself.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
Not on November 30th. On this Thursday, we have our, I'm sorry, Ginny Hewitt from the library. We have our annual Halloween parade. It's at 10:30. It's for babies, toddlers, and preschoolers. They get a chance to get an early start on trick-or-treating. So we'll do a song and a story at the library, and then have a parade over to Town Hall. It's always a great event, and I want to really thank the Town Hall staff. They go all out with costumes and not to mention all the candy for the little ones, so they make sure the kids have a really great experience. And there's a couple other events with Barbara Semple. It's a travel log highlighting women's voyages at sea in the 1800s. On Thursday, November 14th, we have a meteorologist, Phil Burt, coming, and he's going to talk about tornadoes, so something that should be of interest to everyone in Harwich. And on Thursday, November 21st at 2, we're hosting a community conversation on preparing for extreme weather events.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I've put on the agenda a proposal by Lily Daniels Deal, Recreation Committee, to restore the house at hearing at Brooks Park. I put this on the agenda because Lily made a presentation to the Recreation Committee last week that was very well received. And I asked if I could put this in the packet so that the information is widely available. We don't always take the time to congratulate those students. She's a junior at Monomoy. I think if you look at what she put together, and I understand she made a fantastic presentation, I just want to put this in as give us a chance to applaud one of our students who's done a terrific job in putting together a proposal. And Recreation is, the committee's taking this very seriously as a way to restore that property. So please take a look at that. It's extremely well done. Ed?
Yeah, just one last thing. I sort of lost the thread that you had gone from briefings to public announcements.
Yeah.
One last announcement again, the Harwich Cranberry Festival will be having their monthly meeting at the community center this Wednesday at 6:30, and we encourage people to come. We're looking for new recruits and volunteers to help out with the festival, so we can assure that we can put it on another year in a safe and well-done manner. Thank you.
And I have one other comment. I woke up this morning listening to the radio and reminded that today is the National First Responders Day. And so I really wanted to make that point because our first responders have just been, this year maybe more than others, with tornadoes and hazardous spills and all the stuff going on. But I do want to take a moment just to very much, I see we have police and fire, make a statement that how much we appreciate all the service they do to the town. And we'll leave it there. But again, thank you. Thank you all. Consent agenda?
Vote to approve town administrator's recommendation on Ember's disciplinary hearing held September 9, 2019.
Second.
Second. For discussion, Chris, you want to just go give us results of that hearing?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did have the hearing. I appreciate the police department did a nice job going through and proving that the violations did in fact occur. Just for folks that may not have looked at the package, the decision that I've recommended to the board is that the violations deliberated on September 9th at the public hearing. First, that Ember have its 2000 entertainment license for Sunday, June 28th, 2020, and Sunday, July 12th, 2020, suspended, and not allow any outside entertainment on these 2 days. Furthermore, that for 5 Sundays in August 2020, consisting of August 2nd, 9th, 23rd, and 31st, that entertainment on these days be specifically limited to acoustical performances only with no amplification allowed.
Thank you, Chris. Any comments and questions? But this will.
He only has a follow-up. There were other violations, so we have a second hearing to go over those additional violations, so most likely the recommendation will be to build upon this and not to reduce this down.
And I assume Michael's liaison to the Noise Committee, this will help inform the Noise Committee of some actions as well. Public hearings and,
We have to vote.
You had a motion and a second.
I'm
but-
sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Moving ahead, I've lost my computer tonight, so I guess I'm lost. Moving ahead then to a presentation. Jay Colburn from the Community Development Partnership.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for this opportunity to provide you, the rest of the Select Board, and the residents of the town of Harwich with an update on the programs offered by the Community Development Partnership, as well as some of the findings in a strategic planning process that we're engaged in. And I'm really interested in kind of hearing your input as we identify some new program priorities. I want to start out by thanking very much for being here tonight Angelina Bologna, who's one of our board members of the Community Development Partnership and is also a resident at Thankful Chase's Pathways, and really appreciate having a resident of the town of Harwich on our board of directors, as well as the great input that Angelina provides on in terms of the affordable housing that we provide in the region. And I think many of you know, too, my colleague Pelinda Deegan, who is provides the housing consulting services to the town under the contract that we have with the town of Harwich. So since 1992, the Community Development Partnership has worked to provide opportunities for people to live, work, and thrive on the Lower Cape. We're a nonprofit community development corporation, and we work to support strong businesses as well as provide safe, stable, and affordable housing in the region. And I'd like to just talk a little bit about some of the programs and services that we offer to strengthen local businesses and provide affordable housing. We're probably best known for our small business training, technical assistance, and lending. We provide workshops throughout the year, particularly in the slower season in the winter, on financial record keeping, marketing, human resource management, and a whole host of different issues that small business owners find helpful so that they can grow and strengthen their business. New this fall has been providing one-on-one technical assistance to small business owners at the Harwich Cultural Center, and we're really glad that we can bring staff down from our offices in Eastham to be in closer proximity to Harwich businesses that are in need of those services. And then finally, our micro-lending programs. For the last 20 years, we've lent over $3.25 million to over 200 businesses on the Lower Cape. We provide loans to small businesses that aren't able to go and get loans from our bank. Either they don't have a sufficient credit score, or they're a new business, or they want to borrow an amount that a bank won't lend, and often their only alternative is to put those new capital investments on a credit card. And so what we're able to do is provide loans of up to $40,000 for small businesses. And we do that with a lot of technical assistance and support to those businesses so that we can ensure that they're successful and able to replenish the loan fund so we can turn around and lend those funds out to other small businesses. We also have a partnership with Cape Cod Fisheries Trust that benefits several fishermen who fish out of Harwich. It is a collaboration with the Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Alliance, and we operate a scallop quota bank. And if I had an hour, I could explain the intricacies of a scallop quota bank to you. But in essence of what it does is that it helps local dayboat fishermen be able to meet the capital requirements of the complex way that we're regulating the fisheries these days, and positions them to be able to compete with the big corporate boats that fish out of New Bedford and Gloucester. And as a result of making scallop quota available at below market rates for our local fishermen, we keep about $10 million worth of sales recirculating in the local economy and supporting our local fishery. In the area of safe, stable, and affordable housing, we have 70 units of affordable rental housing for low to moderate income residents. About 22 of those units are actually here in Harwich at Thankful Chase's Pathway at 836 Main Street and on Robert Lane. Those are all deed restricted, affordable rental properties that are rented to families who income qualify. And then new this year for the town of Provincetown, we are managing a 28-unit community housing project to meet a need that exists all over the Cape, and those are for folks who earn too much money to qualify for traditional affordable housing, yet given the pressures that we have in our housing stock from second home owners and also seasonal rentals, that makes really limits the amount of rental stock that we have available in the region. And this is an attempt by the town of Provincetown to make housing available for two-income households, that are earning between $70,000 and $150,000 a year, but can't afford rentals to position ourselves as we are increasing the number of affordable rental projects, that we're in a position to provide the property management services so that we can have a locally controlled management company overseeing the affordable rentals that are being built in the region, and creating year-round professional management jobs, and not relying on off-Cape firms who are just going to take the profits from that activity off-Cape. We'll be able to reinvest that income. We run a housing rehabilitation loan program that's funded through a community development block grant. That program currently serves Harwich, in addition to Eastham, Truro, and Provincetown, where we're able to help low to moderate income homeowners make much needed repairs to their homes with a $40,000 no interest, no payment forgivable loan, so that low-income homeowners who are having trouble with deferred maintenance, who may need a new roof, want to make energy efficiency upgrades to their homes, are able to do so through this program. And as long as they continue to own their home for a 15-year period, those funds turned into a grant. And since 1994, we've helped over 400 homeowners. And the added benefit of this program is that it's local contractors who do all this work, and that we have pumped $10 million over the last 20 years into the hands of local contractors, helping to improve the quality of our housing stock. New program that we launched 2 years ago that the town of Harwich has been very much involved in is our community housing partnership. We run a housing institute each fall. Several members of appointed and elected boards here in the town of Harwich, including and town staff, including the town administrator and the town planner, have been involved in the Housing Institute. We also run an advocates training and provide consulting services to the town of Harwich, the town of Chatham, and soon to start with the town of Wellfleet. I think the results of this initiative that we're now in its third year really speak for itself. And over the last two town meetings, the 8 Lower Cape towns have approved a total of $15 million in local funds for affordable housing initiatives. Last year, there were 43 pro-housing related articles on town meeting warrants, thanks to the great work of the appointed and elected officials going back from the Housing Institute and really bringing important measures forward. And then finally, last spring, we launched a public media campaign to try to dispel some of the myths about who lives in affordable housing. And it features the stories of, in this case, a Wellfleet firefighter and paramedic, a health assistant from Outer Cape Health Services, and a teacher in the Nauset School District, all of whom are challenged with housing and need affordable housing, to try to help people understand that the people who live in affordable housing are really vital members of our year-round community and our year-round workforce. So as I said, in terms of the Community Housing Partnership, $15 million in local funding, 43 related articles, including accessory dwelling unit bylaws here in Harwich, Chatham, Orleans, Eastham, and Wellfleet. The town of Orleans actually decided to not only create an affordable housing trust in the way that the town of Harwich now has a new affordable housing trust, but they actually passed a Proposition 2.5 override and are putting 1% of their town budget, about $275,000 a year, from general tax revenues into that affordable housing trust, so that not only do they have community preservation dollars available to help leverage investment in affordable housing, but now a regular funding stream which they can go borrow against through their 1% for Housing initiative. We also offer first-time homebuyer education training each year, last year reaching 49 families. And then in Orleans, we, in partnership with Gosnold, operate an 8-bed Silver Living residence. We have a $3.7 million budget. About $1.8 million of that is from grants and contracts with the federal, state, and local governments. We receive $170,000 each year through the Cape and Islands license plate program. $1 million of our budget comes through earned income, so the rents on our affordable housing units, as well as interest through our lending programs. And then our Lower Cape community steps up each year and provides close to 650,000 contributions from individuals, businesses, and private foundations. So over the last couple months, we have been working with our board and staff on a 5-year strategic plan that is focusing on 2 important priorities that I wanted to share with you in feedback. The first is to look at developing and implementing new strategies and programs that will create year-round jobs with a livable wage. And so we are exploring continuing to have business development offices and a business development presence, not only in Harwich, but also in Provincetown in Eastham. A second area that we're interested in exploring is that while the Cape Cod Commission does have a comprehensive economic development strategy that is developed every 5 years, we really think that the Lower Cape and the Outer Cape are different subregions and have some different challenges, particularly around the seasonality of our economy, the dependence that we have on a service and hospitality-oriented economy, and that there may be some merit on working together with the towns to look at a regional economic development plan that can kind of pull together the strengths of our individual towns, and how can we be more supportive of innovation and entrepreneurship and creating an environment where small businesses really thrive. Part of that might be providing some training and technical assistance and collaboration with the towns of how can we make changes to some of the regulatory barriers that often present a real hurdle for businesses to start or expand or grow. I'll give you, for example, one of the best ways that we can, and a low environmental impact, encourage the development of businesses is people moving into our communities with their jobs and working from home, and perhaps hiring 1 or 2 people to work out of a home office. Yet in a couple towns on the Lower Cape, it's actually a prohibition of zoning laws to have a home office in which you have 1 or 2 employees. And that doesn't seem to be a very kind of pro-business, kind of low-impact pro-business regulation. So what else can we do to work with our towns to support eliminating barriers to creating new businesses? In the area of housing, the last time that the CDP developed an affordable housing unit was the great partnership that we had with the town of Harwich to develop Thankful Chase's pathways, 12 units off of West Main Street on the Dennis-Harwich border, which won several national awards. It's a LEED Platinum certified development, but we haven't done a real estate development project since that. And so our board is exploring, particularly now that all 8 Lower Cape towns have at least 1 parcel in the early stages of the development pipeline to create new affordable housing, positioning the Community Development Partnership to be that developer or to partner with a larger either not-for-profit or for-profit development firm, so that we can make sure that the type of affordable housing that's created here on the Lower Cape really is consistent with our community character and our community values. We're also exploring an initiative that, now that we have the ability for homeowners to create accessory dwelling units, to build an in-law apartment in a walkout basement or above a garage, to be able to support homeowners in doing that. A lot of folks who have that capacity to do that in their properties are elderly, or perhaps don't necessarily have the experience or expertise. And how do you go get a building permit? How do you go through the ZBA to get a project permitted? And we're looking at creating a resource center to help homeowners create accessory dwelling units. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking to expand our ability to provide property management services, so that, again, the new affordable housing that we are so eager to create in the region can be locally managed. And so with that, I would welcome input and feedback and questions from members of the board.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Good presentation. Comments, questions?
I have none.
Anyone?
Great. Thank you very much.
Wait a minute.
Yes, sure.
I'll
You'll jump. Go ahead.
might as well, you're here. In terms of business plans, you know, drawing people in, a few years ago, we had a lot of interest in Open Cape, which has died out. Is that part of your thinking of how to revitalize that to help maybe in your state?
Related to that, you know, certainly, I know that Open Cape certainly has been struggling with how to finance that last mile connection. You know, the infrastructure is built, but how do you service smaller businesses? You know, I think Open Cape has been able to attract some larger businesses that can cover that capital cost to bring the fiber from the main artery to their business. But certainly, one of the things that we think about is replicating some initiatives that are seen in other parts of the country, and in particular in Vermont and in Maine. And that is, how can we create an environment where people move to this community where we have incredible natural beauty, great public schools, and it's a really great place to raise a family, particularly if you can bring your six-figure job from New York or Boston with you. And not necessarily rely on creating more jobs here, but there are people who are telecommuting. And so part of that is creating opportunities for shared workspaces, and some of those do exist you know, in Orleans, and I know there's some talk about creating a facility like that in Harwich. But then clearly a big part of that is also the quality of internet. And while we do, compared to other more rural areas in the state and in the country, have decent internet service through Comcast, there are certainly some folks, particularly people who are involved in video production or who are data scientists. And believe it or not, there are people here who are data scientists working on Cape Cod whose job is based in San Francisco, and they need to be able to ship large data files over the internet. And so I think trying to work with Open Cape and create more opportunities to get that bandwidth increased is an important part of how can we attract people to move here with their job.
We have to group people some way. It makes it financially viable. I like your comments on regulatory barriers. Have you given any thought on some of your funding to possibly incentivizing business was helping support maybe tax breaks to new businesses coming in? That would be active.
So, you know, I think there certainly are some programs that I think are through the state and federal government that aren't necessarily well known or well utilized, and I think that's part of the strategy. But I think there's actually a real fundamental in towns, and you know, this comes out of my own experience of serving on the select board in Truro for 6 years, of being a small business owner myself 10 years ago. I think that we all, as a community, have a really strong commitment to trying to protect the unique character of our communities and the natural beauty. But sometimes the vigor with which we are trying to do that sets up barriers, and that we don't always think about creating a culture in town halls of, yes, we've got regulations and zoning to enforce, but how do we get to yes? You know, how can, rather than just putting up barriers and putting up hurdles, how can we work to support a business person who may not understand the regulatory process, has never participated in a zoning hearing before, doesn't understand the Board of Health and the Licensing Board and the Zoning Board and the Conservation Commission, and how can we create more of a culture in our town halls of yes, that at simultaneously protecting our natural environment, but also making sure that we're not squashing business opportunity in doing so.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. Any other in the audience, comments, questions? If not, thanks again for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jed.
Moving on to new business, we have annual meeting with the board, Brooks Free Library.
Good evening. My name is Mary Ward, and currently I have the honor of serving as chair of the Brooks Free Library Board of Trustees. Other members of the board here tonight are Joan McCarty, William Kroll, Kathleen Remillard, Jeannie Wheeler, Joanne Brown, Bernadette Waystack, full board tonight. And of course our library director, Ginny Hewitt, is present as well. We appreciate the opportunity to meet with the Board of Selectmen each year. We've had a change to the composition of the board this past year. After 2 terms serving as trustee, Ann Emerson decided not to run for another term, and so tonight we thank her for her service. Bernadette Waystack was elected to the vacant seat, and William Kroll was re-elected to yet another 3-year term. So. All members of the board have completed the state-mandated ethics training. Our regularly scheduled meetings are held at the library the second Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m., and the public is always welcome to attend. Our agendas and full packets of minutes and reports are posted online on the town and library websites. The library website is brooksfreelibrary.org. Our report contained in your packets is quite detailed, but due to your full agenda this evening, I'm going to highlight just a few things. First, with respect to our library building and grounds. As you know, since we met last December, the exterior preservation of the library has been completed. This was the culmination of 8 years of work to obtain the funding and complete the work itself. The project was managed by DPW's facility manager, Sean Libby, and we very much appreciate his dedication to ensuring that it was done well. We are, of course, grateful to the for the Community Preservation Act funding for the project and for the support of our town administrator, Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, Capital Outlay Committee, and the voters of the town, of course. Feedback from the community, from the community and from visitors this past summer has been extremely positive. We were also most grateful to have a full building generator in place when the tornado occurred on July 23rd. The generator had just been installed in April. Without it, we would have been closed for 2.5 days. With it operating, we were able to be open, supporting the information needs of a large population of residents and visitors. Disaster preparedness workshops have always stated that open public institutions are very reassuring to community members after a disaster. And this summer, we confirmed that for ourselves. Again, we thank the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, the Capital Outlay Committee, and the Town Administrator for their support, and of course thank the voters for their approval of that funding. There are also improvements to the library building and grounds made by the Friends of the Brooks Free Library. This year, the Friends added landscaping on the parking lot side of the building and along Bank Street, as well as adding an underground sprinkler system for the gardens. The Harwich Garden Club has agreed to maintain the new landscaped beds, so we are grateful to both the Friends and the Garden Club for improvements to the grounds. The Friends also completed another major project this year, remodeling our Thornton meeting room and basement lobby. These changes make the meeting room a much more welcoming space for everyone who attends a meeting or a program. On another note, this might be an opportunity to update those of you who are interested in the conservation treatment plan for our 26 historic Rogers Group statues. Utilizing CPC funding for the project, a contract for the conservation treatment of our deteriorating collection was awarded to Skylight Studios of Woburn, Mass. for $19,580, which is within the funding available for the project. We anticipate holding a celebration event to show the conserved sculptures off to the community when they arrive back for use next year. And just a couple of minutes, if I may, on library services and operations. Brooks Library remains the second busiest library on the Cape and the islands. 227,722 items were checked out, including physical items, e-books, and e-audio. Over 56,550 interlibrary loans were processed. 18,780 reference questions were addressed, and a total of 1,251 programs, adult, youth, and children's programs were held, with a total attendance of 19,486 people. We continue to look for opportunities to enhance resources for local information and research, such as arranging the digitization of our Harwich Town report dating back to 1866. Electronic versions are posted on the Internet Archive so they can be read and used for research without the need to come to the library. In the 6 months they have been available, they were accessed and read over 2,900 times. Readers can find the link to the town e-library section of our webpage. Also this year, we used community preservation funding to digitize the Harwich Oracle newspaper and are currently working on rolling out that product, looking at ways to make the content available online as well. We also continue to expand access to e-content for users by adding, for example, online magazines to our Overdrive subscription, providing a free image edition of the Cape Cod Times through our Newsbank subscription, and the ability to borrow ebooks and downloadable audiobooks from library consortiums in Massachusetts. Continues, guided by Carla Burke, our Assistive Technology Coordinator. Carla was honored in June by the Carroll Center for the Blind and the Mass Commission for the Blind as the Blind Employee of the Year for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's quite a prestigious award. Many other libraries now offer assistive technology as a result of her advocacy. She was also recently honored and the featured speaker at the Sight Loss Annual Dinner. Carla continues to expand opportunities for people with vision loss. As a result, we are expanding our collaboration with services and the Council on Aging by holding a monthly Living with Sight Loss program at the community center. Each program will be immediately followed by the Sight Loss Services Support Group meeting. Other examples of collaborative efforts this past year by the library include with the Voter Information Committee this past March to host an informative session on the basics of municipal finance, Municipal Finance 101, led by our Finance Director, Carol Capolo. Based on the success of this presentation, we are looking to plan more events with the Voter Information Committee to provide residents with more information on how town government works. Continuing leadership in our device advice technology sessions provided monthly at the Council of Aging. Continuing participation in providing a collection of recreational reading for the Rec Department's summer camp program, along with hosting field trips to our summer reading program events and activities for the camp. Continuing to work closely with the Harwich Elementary School, with our youth services librarian visiting 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade classrooms each week to read a story, do a book talk, and promote reading. On Mondays, we host field trips for the 2nd and 3rd graders from the Laurel School, and we offer activity clubs and book clubs for homeschoolers on Tuesdays. Our youth services librarian Ann Carpenter serves on the elementary school's school council, and our assistant director, Emily Milan, serves on the middle school council. And we continue to support the efforts of the Cape Verdean Oral History Project, hoping to work with all involved to provide additional program on Cape Verdean culture. In closing, the trustees would like to commend Ginny, Emily, and our entire staff at the library for ongoing excellence this past year. All served this community in extraordinary ways, dealing with the ordinary and the unexpected. We are grateful for their continued expertise and professionalism. We thank our volunteers again and over. 83 volunteers performed 3,740 hours of volunteer services in FY19. Without them and their invaluable service, we could not provide the services we do. We again thank the Friends Group, a most strong and vibrant organization who, among so many contributions, run our bookstore, provide Sunday programs, and manage our Books on Wheels programs, homebound delivery service. Thank you again to the Garden Club, Harwich Garden Club, for the care they give our gardens and the floral arrangements they bring us every month, which welcome patrons as soon as they enter the main floor of the library. And I have one more closing remark, and of course, we would entertain any questions that you might have. We're all here to respond to inquiries that you have about the library, its programs, its future plans. But finally, I would like to say, it takes a dedicated staff and a community seriously committed to excellence in library services to fund and create, to support and maintain this noble, historic public resource. As trustees, we recognize that we are entrusted by this community to guide this program forward, to demonstrate respect for all who have come before us, and to continuously advocate for the needs of the library so that free and equal access to information is always available for our town, residents and visitors alike. So thank you for your time. We're certainly happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mary. What a- What a great facility. I'm showing my age, but I can remember when we went to the library only to check out books. And, you know, it's obviously you and Jenny and the staff, you know, leads Harwich, leads the Cape in library services. And I'm really happy that Carla's gotten so much recognition because she's a nationwide advocate and been a great advocate for Harwich for years and years. And so that's
Yes,
fantastic.
we're honored to have her on our staff.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want to pipe in here. You're not just the busiest. From my experience, both with site law services and with the town, you've got the most robust array of services for anybody. And the cooperation that you have between the COA and the library is not something that you see in every other town. So you guys are to be commended for the services you offer.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ed?
And I think a hallmark of the Brooks Free Library is the personal touch that you've always given all the patrons. My wife and I, our first contact with the Brooks Free Library is when you were still in the old building, or the pre-remodeled building in 1991. She and our two daughters were back taking care of her mother in her final days, and the library was a real sort of haven for them to go to in the cold days of fall. And especially endearing was the librarian making sure that the two girls each had costumes for the Halloween parade. And I remember Bill Kroll was a member of the board then too.
Michael?
Thank you.
Just thank you very much
You're
for all you
welcome.
do.
Steve?
My memory of the library goes back a very long way because my mother was an assistant librarian there with Ginny Doan. So I spent many years when I was this big, and now what it's become is just magnificent. I wish she was here to see it.
Thanks again. Thanks to you all. Next on the agenda is the Water Commissioners.
I too go way back to the library when there was only one floor, and Jeannie Doan was by herself.
Not
and
by
all the
herself.
statues were there. All
Yeah.
the Roger statues, yeah. Anyway, moving on. My name is Alan Thompson. I am Chairman of the Board of Water Commissioners. With me tonight is Judith Underwood. She's the Vice Chairman. Gary Carrero is working tonight, and Dan Pelletier, our superintendent, is here with us. Board of Water Commissioners, a three-member elected board responsible to the town of Harwich to establish, construct, enlarge, improve, maintain, equip, operate, and regulate the Harwich Water Department, and to include all the facilities and the assets of the department. Water Commissioners is also responsible for the fiscal management of all facilities, assets with specific development issues such as capital improvement and land acquisition. Meetings are generally held bi-weekly on Thursday mornings at the Harwich Water Department Conference Room. So if you have any business with us, get on the agenda. We'll be glad to deal with it. Our accomplishments and projects, there's always a project ongoing. But Lothrop Ave water main, which had a lineal crack in the water main right where the saltwater marsh traverses under Lothrop Ave. It kind of rotted it out, and in the middle of winter, this lineal split of the pipe. So the pipe was repaired. The project included a horizontal drilling, directional drilling, approximately 300 lineal feet of 16-inch HDPE pipe, plastic pipe, was installed under the culvert on Lothrop Ave. and it went well below so we could be out of the salt water. Aside from the horizontal drilling itself, all other work, including the excavation for the entry-exit pits, dewatering, and the 16-inch mechanical piping and connections to the distribution system, was completed by the department staff, offering considerable savings to the ratepayers. We completed repaving of the well access roads with funding approved at last year's town meeting. The department repaved the access roads at T1, that's the main facility located on Chatham Road, and well 10 on North Westgate Road. Additionally, in advance of the paving, the contractor assessing the site, the department revised the road layout to address drainage issues, installed stormwater retention ponds, and installed multiple conduits underneath the access roads for future years. These conduits are intended to bring electrical services underground to the well sites to help minimize electrical outage due to storms and expand the department's fiber network to the Route 39 tank, adding additional redundancies to our communications network. The water service renewal project, the department just recently awarded a contract for water service renewal along the streets disturbed by the new high-pressure gas main installations. This is being completed in advance of the curb-to-curb paving due to take place next year and scheduled to start November the 4th for the replacement. On these connections, they're connecting right to the water main, and some of them have been in there for years and have a tendency to let go. So rather than get caught short and have to dig up a new road, we're trying to do this right along with all the other projects. New source exploration. This is in our current capital outlay program. The department is requesting funds at the 2020 annual town meeting for purposes of well exploration. The department currently operates 14 drinking water wells with a total pumping capacity of 6,000 gallons per minute. The newest well was installed in 1998 on Pleasant Bay Road. The oldest wells are right at Chatham Road on 1935. The peak day demands have increased from 4.7 million gallons in 1998 to over 6.5 million gallons in recent years. The addition of a new drinking water well will aid in meeting the peak season demands. Our goal is to go above the Mid-Cape Highway, as all 14 other wells are south of the highway. If there should be an accident, an oil truck or whatever accident that could contaminate the source. So that's our goal for that. The Pleasant Lake Ave fill pipe replacement. This project will include increasing the diameter of the fill pipe from the transmission main to the base of the tank bowl. Due to the nature of the work, the tank must be drained and isolated from the distribution system in order to complete the project. Completing the project will alleviate pressure spikes during pumping and increase the storage capacity of the tank, as the current pipe size prohibits the tank from filling and operating at full capacity. What the problem is, the tank was built with a 10-inch main, and we're going to replace it with a 16. This project funding was approved at the 2019 annual town meeting. However, the motion to fund this project from water receipts instead of retained water earnings. Retained earnings is our savings account. The receipts is what comes in. So it's kind of hard to do that. So as a result, the department will need to amend the 2019 request to fund the project from water retained earnings at the annual town meeting. Water sampling and testing. Does 900 routine water samples annually. In addition to routine sampling, the department also conducted voluntary water quality testing for a multitude of other contaminants. including PFAS. PFAS has been identified as an emerging contaminant of concern. You've heard about it in the newspapers, a Hyannis supply well that was contaminated with foam at the Fire Training Academy. Well, we are happy to announce that the PFA sampling results came back showing protection in the water supply in Harwich. I think over the last 10 years, approximately, the Harwich Water Department has won, in fact, the 2019 Public Water Suppliers Award. And in May, the department attended an award ceremony hosted by Mass DEP and given the 2019 Public Water Supply Award. This award was only given to 17 other medium-large category water systems in Massachusetts. I think there's somewhere between 300 and 400 water suppliers in the state. This has occurred at least the last 10 years. We have a pretty sharp group there. A message, I'll do a commercial, a message to our resident water customers. Pumpage and consumption. So far in 2019, the department has pumped over 660 million gallons of water. This is approximately 42 million gallons less than this time last year. Our website at www.harwichwater.com provides our customers with many conservation tips, and we encourage our customers to practice water conservation on a regular basis. We have a service type protection plan the department offers, which provides coverage for repair or replacement of your old water service connection from the property line to your shut-off valve in the basement. The water service belongs to the homeowner. So it's a reasonable fee. You pay each year. It's like an insurance policy. If you have a problem, we come and take care of you. Otherwise, we come and charge you. Seasonal properties, the department provides seasonal turn-on, turn-off services, and the board highly encourages seasonal winterization measures to ensure the safety of the water lines and water meters. If you leave town and leave your water on, you need someone to check your house on a routine basis. Otherwise, the pipes freeze, water runs, damage, and you're still responsible for the water bill. And we see them that could run anywhere from $2,000 to $6,000. So it's very important to don't leave anything unturned. Drain the siltcocks, whatever. Irrigation use, the board can't express enough to our customers that conservation is considered when using irrigation. Customers should be familiar with meter location and how to read the reader. How to read the meter. This is an important measure to monitor water consumption, which also provides an opportunity to catch a water leak and make repairs to avoid a high water bill. Now, I drive around town, I see water irrigation systems on, and the head's missing, and it's just like having the water on, leaving it on for whatever amount of time that circuit's running. And that water's going down the street and not doing anything for your lawn. And in conclusion, the Board of Water Commissioners would like to thank the Water Department staff, who are outstanding, for their teamwork and dedication to the department, and the boards, committees, town management, and town departments for their continued support and service to the Water Department, and our superintendent, who has done an outstanding job since he's been here, and not only leading the Water Department, but assisting in your upcoming sewer department. We had a water main break on Bank Street this past weekend. That water main's a 3536 water main. So we kind of have an antique shop, and we'll be looking for money as we move along to upgrade some of those old mains. Route 28 will be one of our first projects in the near years to replace that because of its age. Any questions?
Thank you, Alan. Good job. And Dan, appreciation of the job you're doing there. Well, it's appreciated. Alan, before you sit down, I do have one question. You mentioned in passing a fairly extensive list of capital projects, from a new well to replacing. Do you foresee significant rate increases going forward to handle this?
Increases to what, please?
Rate.
Oh, I have to be honest with you, yes, I do. No, reasonable.
Thank you. Significant, I was.
Yeah, we've had a lot of changes this past year, but we have a tremendous amount of projects ahead of us. Like I said, we have an antique shop. The other thing, before I sit down again, you know that piece of property up on Queen Anne?
Yeah.
That was the cemetery? I'd like you to hang on to that, because in the future, the water sewer may need to move the vehicles and equipment out of Chatham Road.
Right.
So consider that in the back of your mind.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Alan. Any other questions for, comments for?
Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
Other questions?
Yeah, just a question for Alan. You were talking about the library initially. In the small building, did you actually know Obed Brooks?
Did I what, please?
Did you actually know Obed Brooks if you were in that little small building originally?
No, I didn't. Board, when we,
You don't have to respond to that, Alan.
No, I was just making a comment. I served on the Board of Selectmen when we updated the library. You know, rebuilt it one. You know, again, an antique shop. So you could enjoy it.
Okay.
Do you go?
Thank you. Any comments from the audience? Moving on, the next on the agenda is report from the Housing Authority. We have no one here from the Housing Authority, I guess. So we'll move on to the next agenda. Is B is vote to approve annual renewal of mooring surface agent permits for Harwich Port and Allen Marine Sciences. Chris and John, you're going to.
I'm going to defer to John to do the overview, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening, John Rendon, Harbor Master. We have 3 mooring servicing agents that manage our mooring fields throughout Harwich. They are Allen Harbor Marine Service, Mooring, and Hartford Boatyard. They are all currently under a license agreement with the town that runs through the end of 2020, but that license agreement says that the town will review on an annual the performance of the mooring servicing agents. So as I included in the packet, in the memo, I think they've done a fine job, and I recommend that we allow them to continue to serve under the license agreement.
Okay. Michael?
I move that we approve annual of mooring servicing agent permits for AGL Mooring, Harwich Port Boatyard, and Allen Harbor Marine Service.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion, comments? Anyone from the audience? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is request for approval for one-day alcohol license permit for the event at the South Harwich Meeting House, November 2nd. Michael?
I move approval for a one-day alcohol license permit for an event at South Harwich Meeting House to be held 11/2/19 from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., serving beer and wine only.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? Any discussion in the audience? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next on the agenda is accept the gifts of a $6,000 value for a Harley-Davidson motorcycle for police purposes. Michael?
I move that we accept the gift of $6,000 value for a Harley-Davidson motorcycle for the police purposes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm just curious what that means. Is it a motorcycle that's worth $6,000, or because it's?
We'll let the chief respond to that.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Dave Gilmet, Chief of Police. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Don, it is a motorcycle. It is valued at $6,000. It's a 2013 Harley-Davidson police package motorcycle. that is graciously being offered as a gift to the Harwich Police Department. This gentleman, his name is Victor Pekoskis, has done this for a couple other communities on the Cape. It's worked out great. We have had the bike checked out. It's in very good condition. You know, this will kind of afford us a little bit more flexibility for traffic enforcement and accessing areas, you know, during the busy season, working traffic and special events, things of that nature. And I do have Neil Nolan standing behind me. I know he doesn't want to speak, but he's available to answer specific questions because, to his distinct credit, Officer Nolan is the only certified police motorcycle instructor on the Cape, and he belongs to us. So we can train other officers fairly cheaply, and having 2 motorcycles would be a great boon for our unit, and also for our assistance to the Cape Motor Unit, the regional asset that all the other Cape departments that have motors contribute to.
Okay, thank you. Ed?
Yeah, on the value, how did we establish the value?
I think that was through Seacoast Harley, but I'll let Neil handle it. That was the purchase price. The bike's already been paid for by the gentleman. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
Steve. Next on the agenda, accept a gift of a bus from Cape Destinations for the Council on Aging. Michael?
I move that we accept the gift of a bus from Cape Destinations for the Council on Aging.
Is there a second?
Second.
For discussion, and Michael, and then
I was just going to add that maybe we could send Cape Destinations a thank you letter for the gift. That would be number 1, and then we'd just put it on as a reminder. I think we're still waiting for someone to drive said bus. I think that's one of the jobs that we're supposed to post.
yeah. Emily?
Hi, Emily Mitchell, COA Director. I just wanted to, publicly thank Jay Kavanaugh and Cape Destinations for this offer. We were in a very unexpected bind, losing our larger vehicle, and he stepped in to make this possible, so a big thank you to him.
Yeah, great. Very much appreciated. Ed, you had a comment?
Yeah, just a note, as we're sending a letter of thanks to Jay, we should also probably send a letter of thanks to the gentleman who donated the motorcycle also.
Yeah.
Those are always very appreciated.
Great point. Any other comments, discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Next on the agenda is the budget calendar. Chris, you put this on as a reminder?
Yeah, this is just a reminder. On the 21st, we had a overview of the budget. We were going to have the 2 schools come in and talk to the board, as well as the Capital Outlay Committee and the Finance Committee. So from our conversation, Mr. Chairman, we reminded folks that we are going to do a joint meeting and take on that subject matter that was scheduled for the 21st and do it on November 4th.
Okay, thank you. Comments? Thank you, Chris. Next is a request to approve the waiving of building permit fees for the new Habitat for Humanity houses being built on Murray Lane.
Mr. Chair, I'd move that we waive the building permit fees for the Habitat for Humanity project.
Second.
Chris?
Just a note on that the building permit fees, probably past, I guess past circumstance, we do 50% of the building fee gets waived, and on plumbing, we don't waive those because those are fees that are driven by the contractor.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other discussion? Michael?
Well, I guess with what Chris said, are we going to modify the motion, or do we want to, are we just waiving the permit?
If you want to say per past practice or per practice.
Per past practice.
Thank you.
Who seconded that?
I am. I'm not quite sure that I want to waive the whole. I would rather waive the whole thing. I mean, it's an affordable housing complex.
Fine with me.
Yeah. I would still, since that's all of our past practices, I'm more comfortable with. But
either way.
Michael?
I would stick with past practices as well.
Okay.
I mean, we're
There
struggling
it is.
for money here, and
I think so.
rather than a burden on the building department, we
That's
should
it.
at least recover our costs.
That seems like
Yeah.
3 votes, so I'll make it for past practice.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Next on the agenda is the Harwich Elementary School playground discussion. Chris, you wish to?
So, yeah, Mr. Chairman, I guess I'll get started on it. We have that was posted for last week. Several people, I think there was upwards of 40 people that were in attendance. I think there was a fairly, and 3 members of the board were there, Don, Ed, and Steve were all in attendance. I think it was fairly obvious that the playground presented a hazard to kids and in its current state. The school, the Monomoy Regional School District, the school committee voted on Thursday night to not allow kids to occupy it anymore. So they are putting up a fence, and what I would like to ask the board, I have Lincoln Hooper kind of ready to go to do the demolition on it. I think that even if you put a fence up around it, it still presents an attractive nuisance to people on the weekends and such. So I would like to authorize Lincoln to go ahead and do the demolition. The school department will pay for the cost to ship off the material. Once we put it in the dumpsters, we still have an obligation to pay for those dumpsters to be processed.
Thank you. Don?
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be willing to agree to this next week, but I mean, so far, everything's verbal. There hasn't been anything in writing about the agreement of the superintendent to provide us reimbursement for the removal, which was a verbal conversation that was had out there. And the vote, they had ample time, an opportunity to make a vote to recommend to us to tear it down, but they only voted to close it down. So I would prefer that the school committee make a recommendation to us to do that, at which point I would support it.
Chris?
Well, you know, I've been here for almost 6 years, and Mr. Carpenter has not yet steered me wrong in terms of it. The way we had worked it out the other day was that we will send the invoices over, and then the school department would pay it. I have zero reason to believe that they wouldn't do that.
Steve?
Yeah, can't we just have that as a stipulation of our vote? So that, you know.
We can condition the vote.
Yeah,
A letter of commitment from the schools. That's fine.
That they're asking for.
I mean, because the timing here is so important, I think. I mean, we all agreed when we were there, the risk is there, you know. Not only does it need to be closed down, but it needs to be taken down, so.
I would think, I agree. I think we should be able to condition that to be sure it happens, because based on our discussion last week, I think we all agreed timing was.
The school has known that this was a problem for not months, but years, and it's in the shape it's in. 1 week, I don't see any problem if they could put it in writing that they're requesting us to take it down. We are going to secure it with a construction fence.
I think that's what we were saying, so, yeah.
I take your point. My counter to that would be that it came to our attention though just recently. And so I'm looking at when we were aware of it and hoping we take whatever action we can to handle it. Michael?
Well, it's our property, isn't it on us to take it down?
I believe it is.
I mean, they're a tenant, but it is our property, so's the playground.
I don't think there's any, I didn't attend the Monomoy meeting, so I don't know, but I think if the intent
agree
was
with that.
that they know it's gonna be taken down, certainly they have a CPC request in to replace it. So I think there's, you know, plenty of indication that they wanna have it taken down so it can then be replaced.
I think Ed first and then Michael.
I'd make a motion that we authorize the director of the Division of Highways and Maintenance to take what actions are necessary to demolish the structure at Harwich Elementary School, conditioned on receiving a letter of commitment that
If we can have from the superintendent.
from the school district that they'll reimburse the town for expenses of disposal of materials.
Is there a second? Any other discussion?
And that they did indeed ask to have it taken down.
That's fine, yeah.
We can include that, yeah. Okay. Any other discussion? Anyone from the audience? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good, I think we'll all feel better if that's not there. Contracts are next on the agenda. The first contract is vote to approve the Champion Salt fiscal year 2020 for an amount of $107,780. Michael?
I guess just a point, Larry, I think with this, with the topic, I don't know if anyone in the audience wanted to speak on the playground, but maybe we should ask them.
Well,
It looked like a broad topic, and there's several people here. I don't know if anyone wants to speak on the playground or not.
I probably moved, I asked for discussion. I'm sure I moved too quickly, so go ahead. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Michael. Greeting, Mr. Chairman, board, fellow residents. I'm Justin Tavano, resident of Harwich, and I'm listed as the project manager for the Harwich Community Playground. I think it's important as we move forward. There's been a lot of community discussion about this last few weeks, and I think it's really important as we move forward not to look backward on what was or wasn't done or what shouldn't have been done. All we can really deal with is what's there now, and I appreciate your support and moving forward on that. I do want to look backwards just briefly before we start to look forward, and I do want to thank, I want to just think about the millions of smiles that were brought to the kids' faces over the years. And before we move forward, I think it's important to recognize Mr. Howell for his work in bringing it around to life many years ago, along with the work of the other members of that committee. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that.
Yep. The Harwich Elementary School Council, the PTO, the Playground Committee, we've put a lot of work into the information that was provided to us from Principal Mary Oldak, the multiple safety audits, and recent data from the school nurse. And we've recognized an urgent need to replace the playground. At each meeting of these various stakeholder committees, groups, we've discussed the safety and physical and mental well-being of the kids, both in and outside the classroom. As we consider funding sources for the project, we've done a lot of brainstorming, and it was the committee's belief that the community fell within the scope of the CPC funding. Playgrounds are expensive, there's no doubt about that. They're also a very valuable asset to our community. The total project cost that was applied for assumes no additional fundraising or community support. The committee has every intention to continue efforts as well as gathering assistance from other local contractors and trying to move this project forward and reduce costs as much as possible. We don't know where this project will end up, but we hope as we push forward through the process, we're able to gain the support of the board and the community at large to come together, stop arguing, like I said, what should or shouldn't have been done in the past, and bring the community together like they did 25 years ago. I think the only way to give the kids what they deserve and need is to come together and have one common goal and try to compromise with each other and figure out what the best product we can give them is, and do that in a way that the whole community can be happy and proud of what we've offered them. So thank you for the opportunity just for speaking for a moment. And again, thank you, Mr. Howell, and the Castle on the Clouds Playground Committee for 25 wonderful years of a playground.
Thank you for that.
Hi there, good evening. Chanel Brown. I have no doubt that the playground needs to be replaced, but as a former selectman, I go through budget items line by line, and the price of this estimate is exorbitant, and so I decided after receiving the email Sunday night to go through this budget line by line and ask a lot of questions. And so I'm here tonight to ask these questions and to point a few things out. And I'm sorry I'm a little late. I didn't realize that it was tonight. I got the dates confused. I thought it was November 4th that we were doing this. So the first is a very simple question. The application was made by the PTO.
Janelle, let me, I'm hoping you make this quick, because I think what has to happen is that your questions should go to CPC in their application.
All of them, you think?
Because that's who it's directed to. We weigh in whether we support it or not.
Okay.
But I think that should be the main thrust of your questions and your influence, because you make a good point. I agree. I would like to see some more competitive bidding going forward, just personally, from what I've seen. but I think it should go, I think that should be your first call, and then you can bring us up to speed and they will as well, when they bring their articles. We have a chance to weigh in.
Okay, well, let me just ask this real
Sure.
basic question.
Yeah, please.
So the PTO is a nonprofit organization. It does not have a contract with the town of Harwich. My question is, how can the PTO make an application to the town of Harwich when it is not a lessee? It's a very
And
simple legal question.
No, that's a good question. We need to follow up on that. I
Okay.
appreciate that, and that's something we can do.
Okay, so I will hold all my other questions. If any of the board members would like to know my questions, I'd be glad to send an email.
Okay, why don't you do that so we're aware of them? That'd be great.
Okay, great.
But I
Thank
think
you.
it's another forum is more appropriate. Don?
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one thing, as everybody goes off to the CPC also, just to be mindful, there's existing lot lines in the lease right now that we established in conjunction with the school committee, and we both signed the document. So to the extent that the equipment that you're talking about that's adjunct to the playground it goes beyond that lot line, it would require our Board of Selectmen to alter that agreement, because right now that goes with the cultural center as you go beyond where the asphalt is.
Michael?
I want to point out, I think we will have our time to debate this, and to Janelle's point, I think that's a good point. But I would also like to recognize that this PTO and this parent-teacher group, they're volunteers. They're not being paid. They are looking at a daunting application and a process, and we either want to build a playground or we don't. As far as the entire application, I have shared with Justin my thoughts on the entire application, and it's been explained that it would be phased. But again, that will be debated at the CPC meetings. But there has been an awful lot of conversation on this and a lot of technicalities brought up. And like any of our committees and volunteers, I don't think it's fair to expect them to know the entire process. And I applaud them for putting it together. I'm going to punch a few holes in it, which Justin knows. But I certainly support and thank Justin and everybody else that has put this together. And that playground, I know plenty of people that have gotten splinters, and I know a lot of people that were involved, and certainly appreciate all the years that my kids got on that. It is time for a new playground. And I think that the debate will be interesting with CPC. I hope that we can navigate through some of the
Dave?
Yeah, I just, I agree with what Michael just said, but I also, if you had been there the other day, Thursday, the turnout was great. And it was a cross-section of all the people in the town, whether it was the fire, police department, and the general consensus that's been expressed to me by everyone that's spoken to me is they're very supportive of moving forward with this. And again, thanks so much for the work you do. It's all volunteer. It's very important to have people like yourselves who are committed to do this. And I think, you know, we'll put our heads together and we'll work this thing through in an expeditious fashion and in a way that I think makes us proud. So my grandkids were just down there playing the other day, so I still use it even after my kids all used it for years and years. So very important to move this forward.
I think you have consensus that we want to move this forward. Just want to be sure we do it in the right way. Okay? And Janelle said, waving her, shaking her head the same. Thanks again. Okay, next on the discussion is the award of Allen Harbor Jetty project. Joe, you were...
Mr. Chairman, actually on the tracks, neither of those have original ink. They haven't arrived yet from the vendors. So I would ask the board to table both those items. We'll bring them back next Monday, the 4th.
Okay. Questions now, Michael? Will.
The only question I have is there's some supporting document. I think the new way we're doing the contracts in their entirety and any of the work out of the packets, but being told we can review them in the administrator's office. But just to point out, this package is 200 pages without all the information in it. If we get this listed on Thursday, there's not often enough time for us to go in and pull these contracts. So specific to the engineering contract for the jetty, I'd like to get the legal opinion and kind of the sequence of events on that going to legal and what legal had come back with because it was, I believe it was on the wrong form. But I want to make sure everything is done properly and we get those, get the legal.
Okay.
So if I may, just as a follow-up, so you're looking for the contract language and then any documents that we use to support that?
Correct.
Yep, can do.
Anything else? If not, we'll, Joe, we'll table that. We'll, I know John's saying there, we have some time component here. Will that work a week?
If it has to, I mean, we've been trying to get this thing going for a month now, and I think it has gone through legal. I don't know what documents you need, but we have sent it through legal and Maya and everything else to try to get this thing approved.
Okay.
We did put it on a standard contract form that I guess was the wrong form, so we put it now on the engineering form. That went back to legal.
So we have the documentation.
frustrating.
We'll move it forward.
Yeah, that's the only thing that occurred. John came in, I gave him the wrong form. KP Law has an updated form for architects and engineers, and we put it on the right form. But
So
the
it'll
right
be-
form's in the material.
We'll document it and bring it back then. Week won't matter. Michael?
I just gonna comment on that, and John, sorry, it's been a month. Some of the department heads have been waiting 6 months, a year. There's a lot of work that hasn't been done, but in the packet tonight is nothing, again, for me to vote on. It's not complete, it's not signed. Finance director hasn't signed it. Not your fault, but it's not in here.
Okay, Joe, we'll bring it back.
director has signed it, at least she told me it was signed, so.
Not in our packet.
Okay, moving on then, the next on the agenda is the old business, is the Dennis Harwich Yarmouth update. Chris, I see we have Dave Young.
I was gonna
and Michael.
defer to Dave Young and Mike Judici to do the overview on these
Okay.
the items, Mr. Chairman.
Michael?
Yeah, very kidding. Like tonight, that's appropriate.
Good evening.
Good evening. David Young with CDM Smith and Mike Judici with CDM Smith on the, if you get to your third agenda item on the sewer contract. Thank you for inviting me in to talk about the DHY process and where the communities are with that. I know we sent you a lot of information in your packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions on that information. I'll try and address some of that as we go through tonight. We're in the process of meeting with the 3 different towns to provide these updates, answer questions that communities may have. Met with the Yarmouth Selectmen last week and hoping to meet with the Dennis Selectmen over the next couple of weeks. And the goal too is to try to have a 3-town Board of Selectmen meeting sometime mid-December towards the end of the year, so that the 3 boards can get together and have a discussion and see if there's any remaining items at that time. So that's the time frame we're working under. With that, as I understand it, I was asked to come in, just give that update on DHY, go through some highlights in the agreement, and then talk about the next steps, and then get into discussion of the rephasing or potential rephasing of the phases that have been documented in the approved Harwich Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan, or CWMP, to begin that discussion. So with that, there's a lot of information that is posted on this website. I encourage the board, any residents in town to go to this website. The DHY subgroup representatives, of which Selectman Ballantyne, Howell, and Town Administrator Clark have been attending monthly meetings now for well over 2 years. But with the last grant that we had received, this central website was created to post the latest documents as well as meeting minutes, information packets, and some of the presentations and stuff being done in the different communities now to share that are all posted here, and then with links out to each community's wastewater button, so to speak, link. So it goes either way, but instead of relying on each community to have the latest information, it's all centralized now, and you will find the latest documents at this website. This summarizes the flows out of each community's comprehensive wastewater management plan. As you know, this includes a little under 1 million gallon a day for Harwich, because the rest of the flow is already in a intermunicipal agreement that you have with Chatham and would continue to go to Chatham. Chatham has indicated they are only interested in taking flow from the Pleasant Bay watershed. So that's why the flow for Harwich, the rest of the flow would be either at your own treatment plant or looked at for going to the DHY facilities. These are the flows that have been carried. These are what's known as build-out flow, meaning over your 40-year period, but that is the flow that can be generated within the areas proposed to be sewered, that could be built. It doesn't say when it will be built, but it is allowed under current zoning. And it also collects sufficient flow to restore your saltwater estuaries back to a healthy environment. The next figure really just aggregates the 3 communities' comprehensive wastewater management plans into one. And this shows how it would be conveyed, or some options for conveyance, to the centralized treatment plant, which would be located here at the Dennis Depot. This does show, which we'll get into in much more detail, but this does show a revised version, or one version anyway, of the Harwich plan, because you would be paying for a portion of the treatment plant. So the thought was to collect some flow down here and move the second phase up at East Harwich back 1 phase at this point, and also trying to match into your borrowing schedules as had been proposed in evaluating your rate structures and bonding capacities.
David, can you say that again? The part about the rephasing East Harwich, coming back to East Harwich again. We're not talking currently phase 2.
No.
Okay.
We're pushing what was proposed to be phase 3
Okay.
back to 1
To be
phase,
the area
would
over
become
by
phase 4. Yes.
Ties into phase 2.
What was the original timeline of that in the CWMP?
That would have been starting in 2 or 3 years after you completed this construction of this phase.
Phase 3.
So each phase is sequenced 5 years apart.
Okay,
So
so
if
Mike
we-
said 5, you're saying 3, is it?
Well, 3 from now, but when we started, phase 2 is 2017.
2 years design, 3 years construction. You're already in construction. So about 2 years out, you would be starting that phase.
Thank you.
We good?
Yep.
So what I'd like to do then is go through some of the cost. I would note that the DHY subgroup at the last meeting put forth a proposal to hire a third-party peer review consultant, which we fully support, to look at the cost that had been generated for the DHY proposal, community partnership, and to look at the agreement. The thought was to use the services of Weston and Sampson. They were also involved in, or one of their senior managers was also involved in the development of the MFN, Mansfield, Foxborough, Norton Agreement, as they represent the town of Norton.
Mike, again?
Just real quick, David, was that proposed or voted? And maybe Chris or Don could answer, or Larry.
It was voted.
Was it voted by the committee, the
Yeah.
three-town committee?
Well, it was actually, the proposal was too much, so there was a recommendation, it was 32,000 to have it come back at 18,000. I think that material is working its way through the
Okay,
process.
apologize,
It's not
I got it
fully
wrong.
executed yet.
That's why I use the word proposed,
Thank you.
because each community has to send a letter to Chris indicating that they are supporting and spending their share of the funding.
Thank you.
Sorry, I
Our commitment
misunderstood
would be
that.
about $6,000.
Yes.
Harwich commitment would be $6,000.
So these cost tables, we have shared with you previously, but be happy to walk through because this is focused really on Harwich. So the costs that are shown here are your overall program cost. And that's why if you look at the overall program in the town, you know, Dennis is a little over 300, Harwich is about 315, and these are all year 2022 costs. So yes, they're higher than what was proposed in the 2013-14 cost in your CWMP. And then Yarmouth is at a little over 450. And then we'll go through the detail, the cost of the regional being the DHY, how the O&M were done or calculated, and equivalent annual cost, which is a simplified, we take the capital, spread it over a 30-year bond at 2% interest, and then add in the O&M just to show the annual savings. Obviously, that would be much more complex when you bond it over the 40-year period. The shared facilities, just to refresh everyone's memory, the DHY Clean Waters Community Partnership is only for the treatment plant and the effluent recharge facilities. The collection system, which is 75+% of the community's cost in their wastewater program, remains fully under the authority, domain, timeline of the town. So that's an important point to note. This shows the, again, the capital cost, the O&M cost, and then the equivalent annual cost as we just went through on the larger program.
Mr. Chair.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we go any further, because I was looking through this, in and of itself, that's fine. In and of itself, the comparison graph is fine, but it begs two questions. First of all, and I've been saying this at our committee meetings too, it's not just what we're borrowing, it's when we're borrowing it and who gets the savings. So I really wanted to see some time alignment for the 75% part of this, because we all know that in 2022, Route 28 is going to be torn up, which, say they take a year and finish it in 2023, you're looking at 2028 before you could put anything in. We are going to have to front the costs for the installation of the pipes as dry pipe. I see that here, but it doesn't seem to show up in the year, because my guess is you're not talking about something that's $5 million.
If I can get to that point, I will.
Because my
I'll hold
main
that
concern
question and
is,
try
if
to
you can
address
hold
it.
this thought, my main concern is that I spend, my kids get the savings, because that's not the savings that people are thinking that they're going to be getting. It's not lineal. I mean, you don't recoup your own savings if you spend it here and you get it back here. So with that.
I'll hold that thought, and when we get to that graph, I'll on that if we could. Thank you. So this is a further breakdown of the Harwich cost. This shows, again, your collection system. So of your $316 million total program cost, over $236 million of it is in your collection system, fully within the domain implementation of the town of Harwich. The treatment plant cost shown here, $68 million on your own. That's because you're doing it all on your own, and that includes $6.8 million that you're paying the town of Chatham, which the good news is was less than the over $12 million that was developed in the comprehensive wastewater management plan. The effluent recharge which was, again, you were using your effluent recharge in East Harwich, potentially, may not have to use that, and also at the DPW site. And then there have been allowances put in for non-traditional technologies, of which $2 million of that is Cold Brook, which you've already funded as well. So under the regional option, or DHY, it costs you a little bit more to convey the wastewater instead of to a treatment plant on Queen Anne Road over to the town of Dennis, which is where the treatment plant would be. So that's reflected in those costs. There's some costs for shared conveyance, and there was a memo sent to you where we looked at different connection alternatives, which are essentially equal in cost. So we've presented that to the town. We're looking for town input on that and the potential route to be implemented. But it's so close, it's not really a decision that needs to be made today. And then you're only paying 15% of a larger share, so that's why the decrease in the drop there. We had sent you a cost memo describing how all these costs have been generated, where they came from. These were developed off the cost curves from the Cape Cod Commission's book that they have issued, I believe, 2 versions of now. So we've used those cost curves and then updated them through the Engineering News Record Index to the year 2022. But truly economy of scale versus smaller treatment plant proposal. And then it does cost you a little bit more because multiple effluent recharge sites are being used as part of DHY, and you pay 15% of that each time overall. Same for the O&M costs. They've been generated utilizing the cost guides from that Cape Cod Commission guidebook. And that's how these curves were all developed, or costs. There was also a request from the town to show that table only taking out costs that you've already incurred, meaning the Chatham cost, meaning costs you've put towards Cold Brook, costs you've put towards Phase 2 up in East Harwich. Yes, this cost includes the additional costs that you'll be potentially seeking next spring to complete Phase 2. So this reflects, that's why the numbers here are a little bit lower for the treatment plant and for the collection system versus the table that you were just looking at. I believe there was some mention earlier tonight, and has been other discussions, costs that we're looking to continue to decrease your costs, but that do come up. And one of the other reasons that the rephasing plan is now looking over here at Route 28 in the Herring River watershed is there is a proposed Mass Department of Transportation project in that area. So it would be good to try and dovetail your work in with that project. MassDOT has indicated to us that you would pay for the pipe and they would do all the road work. So some potentially good savings there for the town, as well as another project further out, but so we'd like to dovetail in with that. As you already know, you have and have experienced getting a 0% interest loan for your Phase 2 work. It's a competitive process, and you received the highest rating last year when you submitted, in part because it was considered a regional program where you're sending the wastewater to Chatham. So if you were part of DHY, you would continue to get points for being part of a regional program, which would help you. While there are no guarantees, it would certainly help you in the rating system on what will become a more competitive process going after zero interest loans versus if you were doing it on your own and not being able to get those additional points. This is, as I indicated, some of the alternative routes that have been looked at. The other plan and what's been presented in the cost to date would be for Harwich down in this area, your pumping station, you would pump over 28 in a force main to a common station here at Route 134 and 28. Similarly, Yarmouth is looking at that and potentially putting a force main in 28, pumping over there. So DHY, if it does own any common conveyance systems outside of the treatment and effluent, it would be this common pumping station and the force mains that would then go up to the treatment plant. So again, you would pay your share of 15% of the common once you conveyed over to that. What we've been doing, though, to try to look and see if there's a more route or a cheaper route, is we've put the cost together for conveying wastewater in a force main from this pumping station, going up Depot Road and over to the treatment plant. It's a shorter route, but you're no longer sharing cost over here. Ultimately, this pumping station would need to be a little bit bigger. So the costs right now are roughly equal. We're waiting some input from the town on that, and they've asked us to get back to them with a little bit of information on that. Similarly, at Yarmouth, they may go up and go over High Bank Road and directly to the treatment plant as well, instead of putting a force main along Route 28. What that does is Dennis may relocate off of that area to a smaller site and go up Old Main Street there on their own. So
Yarmouth's decision may dictate what our decision then is what you're saying?
again, we're looking for input for all. The costs really are equal. They're within $1 or $2 million either way right now. So that's where we are with cost on DHY. Be happy to now go through some key points in the draft agreement. Again, your representatives have played an important role in helping to identify what's in the agreement. I believe we've discussed some of this previously, and we discussed it at the three-town meeting back a month ago. But it's really all about the cost savings is economy of scale. You can argue over whether a cost should be up or down, 10 million or not. It's about economy of scale. And you're currently at build out again. You know, you would decide what you want to commit in terms of flow for when they go to build the first phase of the treatment plant. But right now we're showing you at 15% of that, which essentially equates to your first few phases, 4 phases of flow to get there. It's also this DHY, which I sent you the signed special legislation that was signed a week ago by the governor. It was mirrored after the MFN, Regional Wastewater District. And what this special legislation does is it allows you to form the DHY Clean Waters Community Partnership. Doesn't say you're going to do it. It just allows you to form it should each of the 3 towns or the towns participating approve of the agreement, the operating agreement, which is what we're going to talk about now. It is a separate entity, so there are 351 towns in Massachusetts. This could be considered the 352nd, so to speak. But again, each community does maintain control over their collection system. The makeup of the commission, who would oversee the operations and the agreement itself, is proposed to be a 7-member commission made up of 3 representatives from Yarmouth and 2 each from Dennis and 2 from Harwich. The Board of Selectmen or a designated authority acting as the sewer commissioners would appoint those representative commissioners. And they would work with an executive director who would be hired, most likely part-time, to oversee the day-to-day operation. The commissioners could be appointed from any of these positions: town administrator, DPW director, wastewater superintendent, and on. Be a 3-year term, rotating, offsets. commissioner can be removed by their appointing authority, language adopted by what's in most town charters. The budget process, which we discussed with you back at the beginning of this year, which was the last major change, really, to the agreement, was to put in a 3-town Board of Selectmen meeting once the budget has been issued in draft plan by the DHY commissioners to each town for review and comment. That has to happen in early November. They would receive comments, make presentations as needed to the various town boards in November, December. But most likely by mid-December, there would be a 3-town Board of Selectmen meeting, and it would require a 2/3 vote by those selectmen attending the meeting to approve that budget to go forward, or the commissioners would need to address the concerns being raised and come back with another budget if it were not approved. There are several items in there too, when votes are taken, to make sure that there are representatives from each of the towns there to have their input and say in the process. Non-financial issues requires minimum 4 commissioners, which is the quorum, with at least 1 representative from each community. The financial requires at least 5 commissioners to be present with a representative from each community. And again, the executive director would have the authority to do the day-to-day or approve 30,000 or less type items. The apportionment of costs are really broken into 2 aspects. One is the capital cost, which would be proportioned based on the % capacity you own in the treatment plant. As I indicated, right now, you're at 15%. But when the commission goes to vote or to receive your input on how much to build for the first phase of the treatment plant, and you say, I don't want that full amount allotment, I want to keep my bonding authority down or whatever, I only want X amount, being 10%, then you would pay 10%. So these are examples put in there, but the wording is you pay based on your % ownership. Similarly, the operating cost, which is the other component, were divided into 2 components. Semi-fixed cost, proportioned again based on the % ownership, and that would include things like number of personnel working there, staff, and those things. And flow variable cost, which would be based on the amount of flow you're actually sending to the treatment plant. And flow variable costs are limited to electricity, chemicals, and solids disposal. Those are the 3 main largest budget items that are really based or impacted by the amount of flow being sent to the treatment plant. Just some of the advantages of becoming a member of the DHY partnership. Cost savings, we discussed the economy of scale, would help move forward with restoring the water bodies here on the Cape. It does meet, because you're in effluent in beneficial locations, both Yarmouth and Dennis. It's at their golf courses. Centralized, again, would help potentially for treatment of contaminants of emerging concern. Many of us heard recently about the PFAS issues popping up. Simplifies the government of wastewater operations. Instead of having 3 treatment plants, roughly 3 to 5 miles apart, you would have 1 treatment plant, which also simplifies, finding staff and all those things that go along with it. It helps you promote sewers and meeting your nitrogen removal needs where you desire. And again, it's an important issue. It gains you more points for helping to access the 0% interest loan rates. Schedule for moving forward with this. This was put together and discussed with the DHY subgroup. Again, the legislation has been passed October 11th. The subgroup meetings are continuing, the representative subgroup meetings, and then local meetings to discuss this, just like this one tonight, are being held to get review of cost and the agreement, further input. Again, a 3-town Board of Selectmen meeting is being proposed for mid-late December, because the idea is to try to lock down the agreement by the end of the year, so that then each town can make sure that they're educating their town meeting voters leading to spring town meetings on the same agreement in each community. The April, May town meetings would occur, and presuming there were positive votes in the towns, then the DHY agreement would be signed shortly thereafter. The communities would submit their notice of project change, or in one case, the final comprehensive wastewater management plan, to the Mass Environmental Policy Act office at the state. And the communities would then appoint their DHY commissioners. The DHY partnership also has a line item in the environmental bond bill that was passed last year. Your state delegation helped get that in. It's for $1 million, so we would begin the process of being able to access that. Only the DHY partnership can access that money, because it was geared and earmarked to the partnership. And then they would also be out pursuing to hire part-time, most likely again, an executive director, followed by roughly 2-year design and 3-year for construction and connections to the system. So again, you're looking at 5 years out from next May's town meeting before this facility is really up and running. Questions, comments on the agreement? I know we covered the highlights of that pretty quickly, but.
Any, Don?
Yeah, I'm still where I was. For practical purposes, forgetting about graphs that are blue and green, when would we have to borrow money and how much to launch DHY, specifically the dry pipe? What's the magnitude of that borrowing, and when would we be expected to do that?
I think that's coming up in the discussion.
Okay.
Maybe
You hold
move
one
to
more?
that.
Yeah, because, and I
I'm
needed
sorry,
to
I
be.
should have put the phrase, I can go to that slide, but I would put it at the end for the discussion.
But why don't you go on, and then we'll get back to Don, see if it answers Don's question.
Okay. So with input from your representatives and some town staff, this is the approved phasing plan that was in your comprehensive wastewater management plan. It shows the 8 phases over one phase every 5 years, so 40-year program. You're currently up here in phase 2. What we referred to earlier is this is phase 3 in the plan, the CWMP, to do this area to the north. Followed by phase 4 would be over here to build your own treatment plant at your DPW site and some sewering around that area. So that was your largest bonding requirement, because you were building your own treatment plant and building some sewers. So that would have been another 10 years or so out. And then gradually you would have worked your way down to do Herring River and Route 28 near Allen, Witchmere, Saquatucket. With, again, some input from your representatives. The next phase is we just laid out for if DHY were to go forward and at next spring's town meeting, you would be looking to fund design of some sewers to send wastewater there, and you would need to have a funding mechanism to pay your share of the DHY treatment plant design. And then probably 2 years after that, you would be paying construction money for both of those components. So the thought was to delay what was phase 3 by 5 years, make that phase 4, pay for your share at DHY, and then start to collect some wastewater down here, being closest to the treatment facility in Dennis. So that's what was shown on that map or the figure we showed you earlier.
Just if I may, could you back up and just point out the watersheds that would be affected by this?
Well, it changes it because you're already doing some up here in Pleasant Bay watershed. What you would do is you would start to remove nitrogen more quickly over here in the watershed, which is roughly like this in here.
Okay, thank
you. I'm going to switch ahead to this, and don't worry, Don, I'll still come back. So we had a meeting, again, with some town representatives and town staff to review that plan that I just laid out, which was to do phase 3 here. Because that was only collecting a small amount of flow for that, about 42,000 gallons. The request was, well, can we do some other, or at least look at some other options of sewing more of Route 28 in that area? So we developed a plan where we looked at 4 different additional options beyond what we were showing. And I know that's a little difficult to see there, so we blew it up. And I have figures, if you, can you hand these out, Mike? So that you can see it a little better. And then I have it summarized on a table as to how much we would collect. But this just gives you an idea of this being sort of the base phase 3, and then if we added in this 3A area, and these demarcations are either because they end up being at a high point or a low point where the system breaks or a pumping station is located. So then this would be a B area with a pumping station here. This is a little bit bigger, coming over here through Harwich Port, and then the last stretch up beyond Witchmere and Saquatucket Harbor. Leads up through 28 as proposed. So with that, these were the options and the additional costs that would be required. Again, the CWMP was proposing this phase to bond $19.5 million. It's currently proposed. That bumps up to 29.4 because it's not only some sewering, but your share of the treatment plant at DHY. But then if you chose to add in that first phase, additional phase, it's a fairly short stretch, so it only adds a couple $1 million. Going further down, that adds about $6 million. It's a larger area. The biggest area would add this. These aren't additive, this is already cumulative. So instead of 29.4, it'd be 45.4. And then if you went the whole way, you would be bonding 48.3. You can see the difference in flows and number of parcels being connected along the way. So you would need to make sure you had your treatment capacity built in for this, which is a little bit more than that original phase, but that may be offset by your next ones.
Michael?
Dave, can you go back?
Which one?
The last slide, parcel count. The total cost, the 19.5 million, that would be what's currently on our phase 3. Not even to the 440 parcels, we'd be at 48.3 million?
Yes, because it's mainly, well, it includes your share of the treatment plant.
Okay.
But you're also all in state road. So the cost to build in Route 28 is much higher than a residential street up in Pleasant Bay. And that includes pumping stations down there and what have you.
Is there a cost breakdown for the shared expenses for the plant? Our percentage of the costs that you mentioned?
Yeah, it was back on one of the earlier slides. That's total. I don't have the first phase. I can get you the first phase.
Please do.
The first phase of the DHY?
The first, yes, first phase, what would be built of the DHY treatment plant. We're not going to build the full 6.5 million gallon capacity.
Okay.
That's what I handed over originally.
I know, I think someone else wants.
We just have like the water commissioners here. I mean, if you had extra copies, it maybe nice to.
Yeah, we can email this, or it's already with Jamie.
Yeah, we'd have to pay for the fact they did delay it, yeah.
I had asked Dave to explore this, you go back one, the map showing the different, that one, to explore what would cost to extend more around up Route 28, because we have a lot of activity there. My thinking was that we're spending a lot of money on our share of the treatment plant, plus the initial part, which gives us a bit, but not much for all the work we're doing. And what would it look to us if we actually went up 28 where we have a lot of interest in redevelopment. We may or may not decide to spend that money, but I wanted us to look at that to see what the options were.
In that
Michael?
regard,
I guess I'd like to add to that, Larry, maybe a future conversation, what redevelopment?
Well,
And that doesn't have to be
doesn't have to
tonight.
be tonight, but this is it's been a general discussion, so.
Right. I just don't see much potential in that stretch forward.
Let me see if I can try to answer Selectman Howell's question. This reflects what was just shown for the base revised phase 3, not 3A, 3B, 3C, that was on that last table. So this just compares what was in the comprehensive wastewater management plan versus that proposal that was on the first map. And what this shows you is that in the green, hopefully you can decipher the green, that what would be bonded, put on your finance plan, based on the comprehensive wastewater management plan. As I indicated, this is your phase 4, so that's just requirement because you were bonding construction of your own treatment plant as well as the sewers around that. So what that does is it bumps up, and we tried to mirror as best we could, doing the phasing to match into some of that bonding. So we never hit that higher peak, but we do spend a little bit more up front, followed by a couple that are a little higher than what was proposed in the smaller areas.
David,
Michael?
green is the changing of phases, blue is what was, or vice versa.
Green is Harwich only, meaning the CWMP,
Okay,
and the blue is the DHY with that revised phasing plan.
thank you.
And so you can see, certainly you have increased or incurred some cost already. You know, you've already incurred the 6.8 million for Chatham, the 2 million for Cold Brook. You know, whether you've actually bonded these or not, I don't know. We're just showing this as though you had, because it's been approved. And the roughly 34 million for phase 2. So those are already showing up and being incurred. So it's really to focus on, sort of from 2020, right in here, going forward.
Michael?
Does this chart reflect the $8 million difference in East Harwich?
Yes, that's why we're showing 34 instead of 24.
And that's on, where's that borrowing? 20 what?
We're showing it in 2018, 2019.
So 2019, we're showing that borrowing.
Yes, we thought, and I apologize, we didn't get to update this. We originally thought this was all happening at the fall town meeting, but that changed a month ago.
So realistically, when is that borrowing?
That would be next spring,
So 2020.
6 months later.
It'll be in 2020 on top of what's already in 2020?
No, that curve would slide 6 months.
So
We're
the-
showing it occurring 6 months earlier than it actually will.
So the green peak would fall right on top of the blue
Yeah, they
peak.
would almost be similar, because otherwise you'd be borrowing for joining DHY.
Right.
Don, did this do it for you? But I doubt it, because it doesn't
Not even
show the-
close.
It doesn't do the debt structure along with the
Not even
borrowing.
close, and I
I'd
just.
be happy to share all the data that we've put in here that plots
If you
this.
excuse me, I'm asking a question. For the public's benefit, for DHY, for us to put the dry pipe in, how much is that, and when are we doing it, so when are we borrowing it? Because that, I mean, the graph is fine, but the public would like to know when they're hitting up against these things, and what the actual number is. And I have a follow-up to that, but first I want to know, when are we borrowing the money? How much is the money? I'm assuming we're also going to be, if we throw in with it, we'd be collaterally borrowing for the treatment plant itself. So, since we have to put the pipe isn't free, so I mean, if we put it down in anticipation of the Route 28 project, what's the magnitude of the borrowing?
That would be the difference that you see on that last table for each increment.
Just a number.
I don't know how far your pipe is. I need guidance from the town as to show me what segment of pipe you want to put in to give you that number.
And when that gets done, when are we going to get the benefit of hooking into a plant? Say we authorize that
That
in
would be
2021.
online in 5 years.
So the plant would be online in 2025.
Under the current program schedule, yes.
And we would put the dry pipe in the ground
next year
in 2022?
Well, that would be
Presumably.
promulgated on the West Harwich project, which right now is on the tip for 2024.
So,
24.
24, yeah. They moved it back.
Yeah, the MassDOT schedule keeps
But I
changing.
think to Don's point, in the capital plan, you had submitted on behalf, David, to try to make sure we had some understanding that it would be $1.5 million for design and then 17.4 for our contribution to the plant in 2023. Then it's 1.5 million in 2022 for design and then 11.2 for the pipe. The pipe, that 11.2, some of that would move up and be done prior to the 2024. So the question is, how much of that, and I recognize you submitted these numbers before, because this just came in, the updated numbers just came in at the end of last week. 11.2, the question is, how much of that is dry pipe that would be in 28 for 2024, and how much of it would be part of the 11.2?
I would need to get back to you on that.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be naughty about it. I'm just saying, each person is going to get a tax bill, and they're going to see, whoa, it went up. When is that, and how much is that, is really a big question. It's not a graph. It's a number.
But I do think that in terms of just logical sequencing, we would want to have the in the ground and the pipe be ready to be connected in once the plant is going to be operational. So
We
some
just
of
need
these,
those dates and
some of these
numbers.
dates may have to be adjusted.
Yeah. Don, I think we know what we want.
Yeah.
Then you get back to it.
I just want,
Sonny?
Sandy McClarty, East Harwich. Is there a guarantee that all of our efforts are going to mitigate the problem completely with the nitrogen? Is there a threshold that CDM Smith is guaranteeing we're going to get below when all is said and done? I haven't, maybe I've missed some meetings.
No, it's not guaranteed. What it's based on are models put together by UMass. And they developed before that the threshold levels of how much nitrogen has to be removed based on laboratory ecosystems, based on monitoring of other sites where the level of nitrogen has cleaned up the estuaries. And they put that in the models with watersheds. So these are our best, all that coming in, how much nitrogen has to be removed. And then the size of the plant, how much water we're treating, is set out to remove that much nitrogen. And it's the best guess we have, or best estimate we have at the moment. Quite frankly, there are no guarantees. That's one advantage of moving in phases, that we can get some information, determine if we're on target, whether we can decrease the amount of treatment, increase the amount of treatment. So we'll have 8 phases and some time to look at that and improve as we go forward. But it's not exact. I wouldn't say that.
Okay, but the assumption is that our efforts are gonna get to that threshold.
Our assumptions are that, and they're based on pretty good research and pretty good computer models going forward and looking at real data and what's going on in other places.
Yeah, because I'm always surprised that, like, I live on Pleasant Bay Road, and all the homes on Pleasant Bay aren't being treated. Obviously, that's logistical infrastructure issues. And I reached out to Massachusetts Estuaries Project, and I haven't heard back from them, but to me, a home that sits on the water would be different than a home that sits far away. And nobody's, how do you value a home a mile away versus a home sitting on the water on a embankment with fertilizer spewing down? And then I keep hearing this smart growth, development, maybe future development. I know Chris Wise is chomping at the bit to put 100 homes next to my house. And so I would just restate that concern. The other thing, 2 weeks ago, there was an article about a bribery charges against CDM Smith in Texas, West Lasco. Buncombe County in Carolina was a year ago, Cleveland in Indiana. So as a taxpayer and a local, I'm concerned about the ethics of this company. And then we asked earlier, but I guess we're committed to this project one way or another, but I feel like the alternatives, maybe they've been researched properly by this board, but I don't think that research has been conveyed to me or to the public. I reached out to Clivus Multrum, however you want to say it. For my home, I would like to do a composting toilet that once a year they would come and pump it. I don't have to touch it. $320 to pump it once a year. And it seems an elegant, porcelain, kind of a Western experience, not a backwoods experience. And so, going forward, I'm asking the mean questions now. In May, with the hopes of either being educated or digging my heels in come May. But hopefully we can, maybe it's just a better educate the public so that come May, there's a good support and we feel good about this project. Because I can say my neighbor is moving to Maine, and this is one of his concerns, is the rising taxes. There isn't much talk about the actual number that this is going to affect us. But I just think for this project to be successful, if I was already on board, one of the things I would really be working hard to is to really bring everybody with me so that come May, it's a smooth process. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Steve?
Larry, I'm very uncomfortable with that just being left the way it was, the comments about CDM. You know, they don't really have a chance to, you know, respond or defend. It's an arbitrary, bring up an article you read somewhere. That's not the way we should be.
Right. I'll let Dave respond to that briefly. But yeah, it's unfortunate because I haven't heard that at all. But let me get back a couple. Sonny, my email address is just my name at yahoo.com.
Okay.
Email me and I'll email you the documents that was put together on what just what I talked about and how it was determined how much we have to remove, the science behind that and the models behind it, so you can read up on it. One of the advantages of trying to worry about cost is you make a point about, you know, maybe just next door neighbor doesn't need the sewer and you do. In order to reach our so-called threshold nitrogen levels, one advantage of doing the modeling was, in all this work, is that we're only going to have to sewer about half of Harwich. You know, without that type of effort, we could have been required for everyone to be on sewers, which obviously would be a lot more expensive. So there's been a lot of effort to do only the minimal amount. And, you know, it's not perfect, but that's been the effort. And we continue to look for other possibilities. If you do that, I'll send you some more information on where that's.
Yeah, I would like to read it. Newspaper articles are not court. They're not legal, but it is what people use to vote on. So whether it's legal or not, it's still in your best interest to educate the public.
Well, we certainly agree with that, but Dave, you want to just comment on the...
I'll just keep it simple. I would put CDM Smith Ethics over and above any other firm in this industry. We have multiple ethics requirements we have to go through on an annual basis. Any firm that has 6,000 employees is going to have a bad apple that appears now and then. We have letters from the State Department, from European countries, giving us exemplary grades for the ethics requirements that we go through. So I would be happy to address specifics, get any information about it. I am not familiar with the Texas situation being referenced, but I would put our ethics requirements well over any other firm competitor.
I think for the record, we've had some questions about the estimate, but we have no questions about ethics, from my knowledge. So, yeah, well, if you have specifics, we can try to get some more feedback. But Dave, you want to comment also on?
I was just going to point out too that, you know, the question came up, why weren't the larger homes down included in the sewer program? Again, for cost savings purposes, you know, there's X pounds of nitrogen that are released from a home that goes down into the groundwater. Ultimately, once in the groundwater, it will move with the groundwater and daylight near its nearest saltwater estuary. So the sewer system was designed to be in the higher density areas so that we picked up the greater number of homes for the shortest length of pipe in order to collect the amount of nitrogen needing to be treated and taken out of the groundwater so that we could restore the water column. So when you get down into the higher end homes down here, you know, we had some people show up at some of the public meetings and say they have a 400-foot long driveway. Well, that's a long sewer extension cost for them, and the homes are spread much farther apart. That would be a much more costly sewer system to pick up the same amount of nitrogen from that home as it does from a much more densely populated area. So that's how the sewer system was laid out.
Thank you. Sonny, we'll continue these discussions. Okay, any other questions or comments? Alan?
On the comments about modeling of the water, like Pleasant Bay, originally we had modeling done on Pleasant Bay 99-2000. Currently, we're doing the Alliance is doing have a program to upgrade all those numbers in that watershed. So we're going to remodel Pleasant Bay so we have an idea of the benefits of the sewering. So as we go forward and checking water quality, we'll know whether it's working or not. At that point, whether it requires more houses to be sewered or if we're okay. So that's ongoing right now.
One other comment regarding this presentation is that we talked about having we need to get this out more to the public. My direction on this was to have this presentation to the board so we could hear it first. We want to follow this very quickly in the next couple weeks for a larger public meeting for the neighborhoods because this idea of to hook on to hopefully some people watch this on TV or they're here, but we'll follow this up with additional public meetings. Michael?
I think it's important that we start showing people what this means in tax dollars, not just graphs and charts. I don't know, Chris, if that's through Carol or where we're going to do that, but people don't read these charts and graphs and get it at all. They get it when they get their tax bill. And I think it's really important on everything that we're doing, we start showing people what it means to them.
I do think, Mr. Chairman, we can certainly do that. I think that there has to be some assumptions made and numbers applied, and then we can do the calculation. Carol has been working with our financial advisor who has this blueprint already in there, so they can change the numbers to reflect the new phasing. But we just got this on Friday, so this is fairly new information even for staff.
But yeah, good. I think that's a point that you've made and Don's made. We'll need to spell this out so people understand the dollars and cents. Okay. Thank you for that. If no other questions, move on to the next part of the discussion is a discussion possible vote to phase 2 contract to sewer project for $6,621,000. Who wants to start this discussion? Chris?
So maybe I'll just kind of get us started. At the meeting in which the board had a discussion whether we were going to do the award or not, there were several questions that came out of that, which I did put to Dave. In terms of it, I'm just going to run through these just for the general public that may be watching. RJV is the contractor that has currently put a bid in. They are $900,000 less than the number 2 bidder, which was Robert Auer, who has won the other contract, not only here, but also a contract over in Chatham. So the question was, would they hold the contract number 2, which is the other portion of the phase 2, the East Harwich project, until June 1st. Basically, they came back and said with inflation costs that they're not able to do that. They said they would hold the 30-day bid extension, which would be through November 19th. So I think a decision has to be made in terms of that piece. Number 2, will DEP hold 0 interest on all remaining work until June 30th? That seems to be that would be a positive as long as we put in the formal requests. How many connections are there? Contract 1, which has already been awarded, already underway, are 256 parcels. Contract number 2, with the alternatives, which we have the ability to fund that if the board so chooses, 179. And then contract 3, which would require the $8.4 million additional money, that would be 209 for a grand total of 644. In terms of, I may let Dave kind of go through, but the way I get the question was, if we wait and try to go in May and put contract 2 and contract 3 together, would that be a positive instead of awarding contract 2? The gist of this is that he does not recommend that because we have the $900,000 below. We have a contractor, RJV, who is a Dedham-based, Canton-based firm that they're trying to kind of get into the market cod, so they probably came in with a little bit more of a competitive bid, so they would be in the area. In terms of with only 3 or 4 bidders in the range of $6 million to $12 million, if we were to go larger, the fear is that it would be less contractors and therefore potentially less competition and potentially more money. So I think the recommendation, plus delaying, as we, when I did the chart, it showed about a well, I think we used a 3% inflation factor by waiting. So additional year is probably going to be at least a 3%, potentially a 3% greater cost.
Yeah, Steve.
For you, Mr. Chair. Of course, isn't it usually the assumption if the contract's larger, you might have more competition rather than less? As far as the number of contractors?
I think that's the assumption. One of the things with that assumption is there's a state group called DCAM, Division of Capital Asset Management, and they certify and rate companies. To do business in the public sector is an expensive proposition. So they actually rate companies, and they have a scale for how big projects are. So generally, the smaller the project, you get more bidders. The larger the project, you get less people can sometimes qualify for that work. You see that more in the like school building projects, where they're big projects. You tend to get a few more bidders, but still that universe is somewhat limited.
Oh, okay. I was under the misimpression that we'd get more bidders as a result of a larger contract.
Okay. Michael?
Every large contractor I talked to said you're gonna get a better value with a larger contract. So I'm not sure where you're all getting that information, but I did reach out to several contractors to ask why they didn't bid on this project. One of the short answers was because I didn't have enough time to bid on it. So then I took it a little further and I called towns' procurement departments and found out how they do their large projects. And I was astounded to find out they put their procurement out for up to 8 weeks on large projects. And this project, I think we went out to bid for 3 weeks. And actually it ended up being 10 business days for someone to bid on a $6 million project. So from the date and time that that went into the central register and that we put out, maybe it was 11 days, maybe it was 12, but I'm not going to get into the weeds on my objections on this. Everybody knows at this point, and apparently we're going to vote. But I don't believe we're getting factual information again. I don't believe that we've been out and done our due diligence as far as contractors go. I don't believe that we went and posted this long enough. I believe that the amount of mistakes that have been made in this project warrants going back to town meeting and apologizing to the town about being $8 million off, explaining the rephasing of DHY. But instead, we're probably going to go back to town meeting for $8.4 million extra on this. And I'm hoping we get to my question on what Chatham thinks of that. And we're going to go and ask for permission to do DHY, which will expedite more payments on DHY. And I haven't seen the tax rate change yet, so I know the public hasn't. But I don't believe we're getting factual information. And I don't believe we went out long enough on this project. And I think larger projects attract more bidders.
Michael?
If I could, just a couple of comments. In terms of how many bidders you get, obviously that's up to the marketplace. We can't determine that. Our experience has been with, I won't call it a small project, if you have a $1 $20 million project versus breaking it up into two $10 million projects, our experience has been you'll get more bidders. You have more medium-sized contractors
at the 10.
that are able to bid at that size project because of their bonding capacity. Every contractor has a single project limit bonding capacity, and they have an aggregate project bonding capacity. So if they have other work going on, a medium-sized contractor couldn't bid on a $20 million contract because he just doesn't have the resources to perform that level of work. So that's been our experience. Do I guarantee that you're going to get more bidders at two $10 million projects than you would at 120? No, I can't, but that's been our experience. The higher the project value is, the smaller your field of potential bidders are, because the contractors can only do a certain amount of work. In terms of the bidding period, you're correct. For contract 2, we bid it for 2 weeks. We got 4 bidders, excuse me. Contract 2, that was contract 1, I'm sorry. Contract 2, we bidded for, it was 3 weeks. I'm not sure where the 10 business days comes from. It was 3 weeks, based on feedback that we got from this board on contract 1, and we got 3 bidders. Those 3 bidders were 3 of the 4 that bid on contract 1 as well, same bidders. In terms of other data points, Chatham bid 2 contracts this year, both in the $7 to $8 million range, one in February, one in July. They got 4 bidders the first time, 3 bidders the second time in July. Again, those same 3 contractors that bid on your contract 2 bid on Chatham's second contract. So I think it's more of a function of the marketplace, that a lot of contractors are busy. It's also a function of being on the Cape. For contractors that are off Cape, obviously there's higher costs for them to come on Cape to do the work. And you have a great contractor here in town, big and capable, and has historically dominated the Cape marketplace. So I think those 3 factors kind of limit the field to begin with.
Yeah. Michael?
Follow-up, you said based on feedback from this board, you went out for 3 weeks?
There was feedback after contract 1 that it was too short of a period. So we extended it by 3 weeks. I would say the Chatham contract, don't know that having a longer bidding period in this marketplace would have garnered more bids. Again, we can't guarantee who and how many bid on each contract, but that's been our experience.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Listen, no one can know whether these bids are going to go way up or stay the same. You can't know that. What we do know is that we were based on a figure of $15 million that we were going to be losing, that we got stampeded into bidding or awarding the first contract, knowing that that was going to torch our ability to finish everything. I also know that we bond of trust with the public. That if this were DFH Industries, and I was thinking I might save $1 million off of this thing, I might take that gamble. But it's not my money. It's not your money. It's their money. We've broken that trust because 15 million was not a real number. It was never a real number. So once we awarded the first contract, we were well on our way to telling everybody, yeah, that's fine. Looking at this here, that's fine means that fewer people are going to be in this next contract than are going to be left behind as hostages. Where you got it. If I'm going to go in front of town meeting, the only way that I would even support the article at town meeting would be if we go back and say, whoops, we made a mistake, we can't finish it in the amount that we promised you we could finish, and you voted to approve at a ballot. So we're asking you, because it's your wallet, whether you want to go ahead with this or not. I would be enthusiastic about going in front of town meeting and say, we made some missteps, but here's why you need to do this. If this gets fragmented, then I'm not in anymore. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we should probably have a timeout and find out why we're at where we're at so it doesn't happen again. But again, I don't know whether it's going to save us any money. None of us here know whether it would save us any money or cost us any money if we went out for a bid. But I do know that in the past, we have always been well served with getting real bids before a town meeting article and showing up with a potential bidder as an awardee to say, this is what we're going to do. And I'm concerned with where we're at in this whole process because our credibility isn't all that high on these numbers right now. We could have asked. We could have put everything on hold and we could have said, we can't do it for that. We messed up, but we still need to do it. If we go ahead, aside from the fact that there's some not too small niceties here, we have a contract policy where we call for the Board of Selectmen to sign high magnitude contracts, and the proposed motion has the town administrator executing the contract, which I don't know, it flies in the face of logic if we change a policy a month ago and then we go ahead and give an exemption of, I don't know, $6,621,000 for the signature authority. There's still so much wrong with this that hasn't been explained adequately to the public. that I'm sorry. Not only can't I vote for this, but if this gets peeled off, I guarantee you I will not vote for an article to ask for the more money. And by the way, that more money, let's be clear. Has CDM Smith been paid under this contract?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And will CDM Smith, because of the resequencing that was necessitated by breaking this up into other contracts and having to hold back these people, will CDM Smith also be asking for more money to redesign, to hook back in these third contract people?
I'm not sure I fully understand, but we haven't charged the town for having to redesign the pumping station that we were directed to, and we haven't charged the town additional money for having to resequence now into 3 contracts and bidding contract 2.
Will there be any more?
We have to repackage everything again next spring and do that, then we may have to ask for more money.
If we did it in a suggested pattern here, that we award this contract 2 and then go out for a contract 3, are you stating then that there'd be no further expenses from you, or am I inferring the wrong thing from you?
Bidding is pretty minor to bid contract 3, and contract 3 has been put together.
What's minor?
It's like $5,000 to bid a contract like that.
No engineering? No nothing?
We've already sequenced into contract 3 based on the memo that we put together back in July.
Okay, well, that's another reason I wouldn't support this, because they got paid, but the people who are actually getting the construction work done don't have any project.
Stan?
Stan Pastuzak, Northeast Drive. I was here 2 weeks ago when you were discussing this, and I guess I was the only one that night. I also revisited it through the Cape Cod Chronicle article that was there this past week that revisited it all. And I just, matter of fact, that night I woke up in the middle of the night thinking about a lot of what was said, going back to some of the things I did in my career as budgeting and everything. And I just wanted to mention, you know, we discussed the bad estimates. Were they way off? Yeah. But that was life. I mean, that happened. We can't go back and do anything about that. The second item we talked about, when you compared the different budgets that you did get for contract 1 and contract 2, you felt that the contracts you got from the different contractors were fairly close for each bid, and so that, in a sense, felt to be economic reality. Whether the estimate was not wrong or not, the economic reality is what counts. The third item, and we talked about again, Mr. Howell brought up about why did we approve contract 1 if we knew we were behind the 8 ball to begin with? And it was stated that there was some reasons for that about getting 0 funding. You wanted to delay a bid for revised contract 2, which serves approximately 200 more homes, until you go down to town meeting with some sense of earning the voters' trust and obtaining the additional funding for phase 2 to sewer the remaining 200 homes. I guess my question to all of you, but specifically Mr. McCaskill, since he states that he does not support approving contract 2 at this time, and I guess Mr. Howell too, where are you going with this? And I think, Chris, I think you answered a few of my questions that are you planning on going back and combining contract 2 and 3 if you get additional funding approved? Do you believe there are economies of scale in this, doing this? Or do we have any facts, or is that just opinion? On keeping 2 and 3 separate? If so, why not go ahead with contract 2? Do you believe costs for 2 would go down rather than going up? Probably not. I would think they're going to go up, and it sounded like that's what I was hearing at this meeting. What if you do get additional funding approved at town meeting? What's going to happen then? Now you go bids, and now the bids are even higher than what you thought they were going to be, so your funding approval is too low again? And then lastly, what if you don't get the voter approval at that time? Are you still going to go back and try and do contract 2? Can you at that point? And the other thing I brought up, and I think you did, Mr. McCaskill, at the last meeting, you said East Harwich residents want a chance to revisit. To do what? We know that we have to do the sewers. I've talked to many people in my area, and most of the people don't even know what's going on. They're asking me questions about what's happening with the sewers. So I don't know where that's coming from. I think time and again we've been told we have no choice. We got to do the sewers. So I don't see any benefit to delay contract 2 any further than we already have. If you feel you've made mistakes in doing what you've done up to this point, don't make any more. Think about what you've done and try to improve further. But don't make any further mess than you already have made of this project.
Michael and then Don.
I'm not sure I could follow all your questions really, and I'm not sure if it was more of a statement, but maybe you could email me those questions tomorrow and I'll answer every one of them individually. But to start, I'm gonna answer with facts or opinions. I think at this point, we really only have opinions.
That's
I don't think you've got anything here tonight that's demonstrated any facts. You have Mike's opinion, and you have me calling large contractors in Boston, asking them questions, and them giving me answers.
The facts are contract 1 and contract 2
as,
right now.
As for, no, they're not the facts. As for your opinion versus, say, this gentleman in the front row that's spoken eloquently, as it has his wife, about his objection to this project, there are a lot of people in East Harwich that are upset with what's going on. Contract 2, I have another question about Contract 2. I don't know if you've been part of the detours out there, but when Contract 2 starts, where are we gonna put all those cars? And where are we gonna put all those policemen? Has that been done yet?
I
Has that
live
been
on
decided?
Northeast Drive. I know what's going
Well,
on
great.
out there.
So,
I can't even get
right.
into the center of
So-
town because of 39.
Right, so I applaud you for being here tonight and asking these questions, but those are your opinions.
That's correct.
And there's a lot of other people with a lot of other opinions. And if you send me your questions, I'll try and answer them. Where I'm going with this, we made a terrible mistake. CDM. A lot of people want us to go back to town meeting, and again, it's your opinion that we're not gonna get a better deal on a $14 million contract versus a $6 and an $8 million contract. I haven't seen any factual information presented to this board yet.
Well, we're arguing opinions right now.
You're-
so
That's
let's-
right.
I
let's
just
all
want to
learn
make
from
one more
that.
comment, I'll
And,
sit down. It is my opinion, and as I
Well-
stated 2 weeks ago, if more people were here at these meetings raising questions, whether it be my opinion or the opposite opinion, maybe your answers would have been different too. But nobody showed up. I was the only one at that meeting 2 weeks ago. And there's, how many are here tonight?
One follow-up.
One last.
I have one more opinion. My opinion is our expert that's sitting in row 2, our water wastewater superintendent, that if you go back to why we hired him, hasn't been included in 90% of these conversations. And that goes down to the Board of Selectmen is not involved in day-to-day business. That's through the town administrator. But he is not, we had another presentation 2 weeks ago, not invited. Every other town brought their experts with them. We did not. We brought the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator.
Okay, I'll just say one last thing. One last thing. Okay, I feel like I'm being personally attacked by you as a taxpayer who came here to state his opinion, whether you agreed with it or not. And I have the right to that opinion.
Of course.
And you can disagree with it, and that's fine. But don't attack me on it.
Not attacking, I'm spelling out other people's opinions.
You should listen to yourself on this tape.
I apologize.
Okay, let's move on. Don?
Yeah, going to go in a slightly different direction. I understand where Stan's coming from, but whether people show up or don't show up is never part of my calculus. As far as I'm concerned, I'll tell you privately the same thing as I'm going to say publicly, because that's what I do. And I'm representing the interests of everybody, whether they show up or not. I don't represent the interests of people who show up. So that's really important to understand. Now, in terms of facts, on the construction side, we were off by 43%. Let that sink in, 43%. So that's a major number. So I've got an extra question to throw into the mix here. What would you do if this were a school or a library, and you gave them an estimate, we borrowed against that estimate, you found out you could only build 2/3 of the school, would you have awarded the first phase of the school, or would you have gone back and said, we're off, we don't have enough money? Then why the hell did
I think we'll go, you need to use the microphone. And just identify yourself for the folks.
Hi, I'm Craig Borden, and a real quick question on this last bid, where you have one bidder that's basically $1 million under the other lowest bidder. Did I hear that that was a $6 million bid that we're talking about?
6.6.
So how can it be possible for anybody to come in $1 million less on a $6 million bid? Something is wrong. I would throw that right out. That's ridiculous. I don't care if it's bidding for, I spent my life, not this scale though. It just doesn't make sense. And I think all of you have to come up with some sort of an overall cost of what we're doing here, the tax ramifications over the next 10 years, so that you can answer questions to people like me and say, yeah, it's going to cost you X number of dollars a year because of the sewer. Right now, what I'm hearing, and I don't know, that's why I'm here, I'm hearing all kinds of things. There's no continuity. Someone has to lead this with continuity, both in money, time, and construction. And I think that's CDM's job. But I don't know this. So there's a lot of erratic things going on. That has to be smoothed out. Other people have said. That's all. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ray. Steve?
The dilemma we have, and partially in response to Craig here, is that, you know, I think there's obviously people are unhappy with sort of the way the bidding took place and so forth, but when asked whether we're going to get a better bid, I look at the hours, who I, you know, have an enormous amount of respect for, and we look at what their bid was. And if you ask the hours about this other firm, they say they're a great firm, good firm. You know, they're just in here trying to pick off a piece of the landscape is what they're trying to do. So my fear is walking away from the bid, you know? That's my fear. I mean, and having to come back to you, Craig, and to other people in this town and say, guess what? I thought maybe I'd get a better bid, but I didn't. And, you know, or a higher bid, yeah, or, yeah.
Greg, I'm sorry, you can't speak unless you use the microphone.
Yeah. So it's just, I find myself in this dilemma.
Well,
you know, where I'm worried about actually exposing the taxpayers to a greater cost.
Yeah. Greg, go ahead. You wanted to say something now.
No, I just, I sympathize with, empathize with what you're saying, but I think that has to be really looked at carefully. When you've got someone more than 10% less as a low bidder, you got to really look at it. Because I've seen situations over there where they've given out low bid, and they got low bid. We got one shot to do this, and that's it. So,
Don?
Yeah, I'm going to make this simple because I have a feeling I'm going to get outvoted anyway, but I'm going to move that we reject the bid and that we put out a combined contract with 388 connections in advance of town meetings so we have a known number.
Second.
And quite frankly, I'm struggling a bit because in the end, I hate to give this up, but I want to be sure we get it all done. And if our chances of getting it all done, all phase 2 done, better by delaying it till next spring, then I'd be for delaying it. If it's better to do it piecemeal, I'd be for that. So I'm struggling a bit on this. And I'm not sure anyone's going to help me, are they?
Conscience.
We all sit here with our own votes.
One question that we didn't, we asked last week was the impact of Chatham. We don't move ahead and start.
Yeah, we were
moving that.
trying to schedule a meeting with Chatham. We have not. I mean, in review of the contract, I think Dave was a part of that too. You know, Chatham gets paid their $6.8 million no matter how quickly we go.
Right.
They probably would be ideal if we sent them earlier flow so then they can do the analysis on Cockle Cove. If we don't send them flow, I mean, I don't think there's any.
We're paying that anyway.
We're paying it one way or another.
Yeah. Any other comments from?
You know, I think one other thing to keep in mind, if you did award contract 2, that when you go to bid contract 3, you have 2 very reputable contractors. They both like one another. They were combined and did the Eastham water main project. They work well together, so that when you go to bid contract 3, you're going to have 2 very hungry contractors who are going to aggressively try to win that phase 3 to add on to their contract.
Alan?
Just curiosity, was there mobilization costs on this contract, JV? And
Yes,
yeah,
there's a
there
separate
is.
mobilization.
So in the next phase, there'll also be mobilization again.
We always include a mob cost, yes.
Yeah. So it's how much cheaper is it? $1 million less? Yeah, $1 million less.
900,000, just
And
under
it's
9.
got mobilization in it. So doesn't sound like too bad a deal.
So spell that out for me, Alan. What was where were you going with that?
Well, you know, I'm not a bidder of these projects and have never been involved, but my thoughts are, if this contract, which is $1 million cheaper, and has mobilization costs in, this outfit's coming down from Canton and gonna do this project, and for that amount of money, even though part of it's required to get mobilized, and I don't know if there's bonding fees to bonding companies and all that kind of stuff that would be included in. As long as you don't have any problem.
Okay. Any other, Don?
You know, for your edification, that is the split. It's the good deal in the contract that you got in hand versus the bond of faith with the people who voted the money. So the question is, which matters more, the $1 million or being able to continue the trust of townspeople so that when you ask for money again, which you most certainly will be, that you can look them in the eye and say, you know what? We listened to you, it was your money, and when we go out, we're gonna have a bid in front of it.
I have
That's exactly my point.
is that I hate for this to jeopardize the DHY agreement going forward, because that's also big savings, another regional plant. Pardon? What's the motion again, Don?
It was to not award the bid in front of us, and to combine the contract 2 to contract 3 hookups totaling 388 contract proposal or RFP that we will put out in advance of town meeting, so we have a known number to be able to present to town meeting.
Yeah, I wish you have a second to that. Okay, let's vote. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I'm opposed too. I think we have to go ahead.
That doesn't get it awarded, though.
No, we know that.
Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we award the Phase 2 contract, 2 sewer project to RJV Construction Corporation in the amount of $621,306.25.
I'll second it.
And authorized by the Board of Selectmen?
I mean, it is authorized by the Board of Selectmen. I
Yeah.
just become clerical when I sign it.
Okay.
Instead of having every element of it come back before the board, but you can have every element come back
All right.
before the board.
Michael?
I guess before you vote that, I would,
Yeah.
that's what I would argue. We're not even looking at a contract. So, Chris is gonna look at it, review it, and sign it? Or is it gonna come back to the board so we can make sure it's actually on the right form and done correctly?
We have time to do that. We have till the 19th, right, to bring back the full contract that we can sign?
Was reviewed by council.
Yeah, if you award it, then we can,
Let's do that then.
It's in the specs.
it was in the spec.
Yeah.
The contract was in the spec.
Contract's
I
in the
believe
spec.
they signed it.
Yeah.
So we can bring that back, Chris, next time, and then we'll,
We'll make sure it reflects what Michael wants here. What is it exactly?
I'd like to read the contract. I
Right.
mean, if we're gonna sign a contract, it'd be nice to read it.
Well,
Chris, go ahead. You-
I
you have
think
floor.
if the board wants to sign it, then we can have the contract signed and prepared, and then under your signature, Mr. Chairman. So if you don't want to have the town administrator sign it, then have the chairman of the board authorized to sign the contract.
But you haven't seen
No, I
what
think
the
we just want an
contract is.
opportunity to see it, that's right.
Yeah, we just want to see it.
Yeah, that's fine,
Oh,
and then
okay.
you can,
Okay, that's fine.
Okay,
I just want to make sure I'm clear on,
okay. We'll bring it back then to do that.
Can we just add the few important things, the letter that we were gonna put in there, saying that you recommend this contract, that the finance director signs it and says that the money's there? Can we make sure
Yeah,
all that
that
stuff?
was in
Finance
the-
director always signs, yes.
That's been in the
proves
other
as to
packages.
availability of funds.
But
That's-
point,
Yeah, we haven't
point
seen it.
taken. We'll get the
Put
full,
contract to
we'll
you.
get all the
It's
documentation.
not here.
It's the same contract that
it's
was
the same
previously
contract, the same,
signed,
Contract too.
the same
reviewed by
information that's
council,
been
it's
in the
bid
last.
documents.
We want to review it again.
Sure,
Just
absolutely.
just have it in the
That's fine.
packet.
I'm just giving info as to what it is.
Right.
It's the same as
Okay.
contract.
we got a vote, right?
Right. Well, we're going to bring it back and we'll vote next time when we get the
Well,
contract in hand.
Why don't you
No.
vote it, and then
Okay.
we'll just, you guys can sign it once we get, or I'll bring the
Right.
documents back signed, and then I won't sign it until after you guys have seen it at
Sign
the
the
last meeting.
contract next time.
Yes.
Okay.
So
then
you
we-
have
we
a
to take
motion
vote.
and a second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye on that. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That was moving to the overview of the capital budget, Chris?
Yeah, in light of the hour, Mr. Chairman, I did send out at the last Thursday's meeting at the capital outlay, they made some votes, so I included that and sent that around this afternoon, reflecting their votes. So I think there'll be other opportunities, but I do appreciate very much the capital outlay committee doing the due diligence to accelerate their review, so that way the board can have the value of their information. The second one here is on FEMA. This was a little bit confusing, but believe it or not, Hurricane Sandy, which was, I think, in 12, we've now recently been approved that what Tom Gagnon submitted in 12 has been approved, and we're eligible for $46,865. They did say that we need to have the contract signed, so I'm gonna put that in under the contract signature, because I guess that's the way they did it for Hurricane Sandy. On the, and just the last thing here, under the holiday schedule, talking to Patty, yeah, well, even you, Mr. Chairman, said that for Thanksgiving week, you're gonna be away. I think we're just trying to figure out, are there gonna be meetings in which we may not have quorums, or how are we gonna lay out the agenda packet? If, so I think if people can just let us know, or let Patty know what the
What your
holiday
holiday
schedule
schedule
is, so we know. And then we may have to have a meeting that the Monday after Thanksgiving tends to be a little lighter of an agenda, because there's not a lot of time to get an agenda packet put together.
Okay.
And that concludes my comments this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Selection report, Don?
Nothing.
Ed? Michael?
I meant to mention it earlier, when we did the disciplinary hearing on the Ember, it would be nice if we could get a written policy, I guess, on this, so that we're consistent. Chris goes through a certain process when he does these interviews. It was very well spelled out. But tonight, we voted unanimously to impose a punishment for the entertainment violations. It would be nice if 4 years from now, if there was the same scenario, that the same punishment was issued, that some consistency to what we do. So maybe give some thought to how you came up with that and what the next steps are. Because again, I think consistency to these restaurants and bars is important. I don't think if the next one comes in and they get a lighter sentence, that they're gonna be thrilled that this restaurant with that one.
I do think to that point, that's a good point. I did look at, the only other one that I had recommended to the board for suspension was Perks. So I did review the findings that I had with that to progress. What I was trying to do in this is, I actually think the board can actually, if they have a certain standard in the Harwich port, I kind of laid out the acoustical only for the month. I did that really if the board wants to ease up on some of the noise complaints that may exist in Harwich port, then you could add that to a restriction on each of the licenses for Harwich. So you may want to see how that goes next year, but if that's something that has been effective, then that's something that you could do as a, so I did craft it in such a way where if the board wants to put conditions on those licenses, that at least you have a roadmap. But I'll think about doing like a, where I got that.
And I appreciate what you did and the minutes. I just think consistency is key.
My only comment is reminder that we have the budget finance workshop tomorrow at 6 o'clock.
Over at the library.
At the library. And so, I was working hard on it. Chris has done things to bring us up to speed.
You missed Stephen.
Stephen?
What? Oh, I'm good.
Thank you, Michael. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
No, I get it. I know what's going on. I'm totally okay with it, honestly.
I was torn down the end.
It's fine.